Chapter 3765. Hearing her words, they fell silent. After a long time, Leng Hua said, "Since that's the case, I'll make the arrangements." "Yes, you go and make the arrangements first. Also, inform the others. However, they don't have to come with us. We need people here," Feng Jiu said slowly. After thinking for a while, he looked at Fan Lin. "You said that you've seen the people from the first mercenary group?" Fan Lin replied, "Yes. In order to confirm the news, I specially went to ask their leader." Feng Jiu thought for a while and said, "The leader of the first mercenary group, the one called Jinifeng?" "Yes." "Well, since that's the case, you go and discuss with him. We'll hire them to go to the savage wilderness." Hearing this, Fan Lin paused and glanced at Leng Hua before saying, "Yes, I'll go there later." "When do you plan to leave, master?" "Tomorrow." Thus, following her decision, Leng Hua, Fan Lin and the others began to prepare. That night, they called everyone back and told them to pick out a few people who could travel with their master. "Master, you only plan to bring a few people to the savage wilderness?" Qi Kong, who had rushed back from the East City Lord's mansion, looked at Feng Jiu and said worriedly, "Master, I'm afraid you won't be back so soon. You're going to give birth in a few months. If you go out at this time, won't you? The first mercenary group will escort us to the savage wilderness. Together with Du Fan and the others, it'll be enough," Feng Jiu said casually. After all, they came from that place. Even if it was dangerous, it was nothing to them. Qi Kang's expression turned serious. He looked at Feng Jiu and said, "Why don't I arrange the things at hand and go with you, master? If master was not pregnant, it would be one thing. But now that she was pregnant and had to go to such a dangerous place, it was really worrying." Feng Jiu smiled, "You just took over the East City district. You can't leave, and you can't leave. Don't worry. With them around, it'll be fine." She paused and stroked her bulging belly with one hand. She smiled and said, "Besides, this is my child. I know what to do. Then master should bring 2 midwives with you on this trip. Just in case," Qi Kong added. Hearing this, Feng Jiu burst out laughing. She looked at Qi Kang's frozen face and shook her head. She jokingly said, "Qi Kang, you'll get old easily if you keep worrying about this and that. Also, I've already said that I'll be gone for at most 2 months. If I'm fast, I'll be back in about a month and a half. I've only been pregnant for about 5 months. I won't give birth so soon." In order to prevent him from continuing, she waved her hand and smiled. Okay, I asked you to come back tonight just to tell you that you have a lot of things to do in the East District. Go back." Seeing this, Qi Kong opened his mouth but didn't say anything in the end. He just looked at Du Fan and Leng Hua and said, "Then I'll go first. You have to take good care of master." "We know." They responded. "Master, I'll go first." He bowed to Feng Jiu and left. Chapter 3766. Fan Lin didn't stay long because he had to go out. That night, he went to the first mercenary corps to find Jinifeng to discuss the matter of going to the savage wilderness. Leng Shuang and Leng Hua spent the night preparing the things they needed for the journey. By the time everything was settled, it was almost dawn. Leng Shuang entered the mansion as soon as the sky brightened. Compared to the busy people, Feng Jiu took a nap. Hence, after breakfast, he took Leng Hua and the others out of the city in a carriage. On the mountain road outside the city, the first mercenary corps was already waiting there. They arrived early and had been waiting for a while, but the person they were waiting for didn't come out. One of the mercenaries couldn't help but ask, "Leader, that person only told us to wait here. Who is our employer? Why isn't he here yet?" Jinifeng, who was resting under a tree, didn't open his eyes. He said, "Just wait. You'll know in a while." "Leader, we only picked 20 of our brothers to go to the savage wilderness. Will something happen? One of the men couldn't help but ask. Although they had been to that kind of place more than 10 times, they had never dared to rush in with only 20 people. However, the person who gave the mission said that they didn't need so many people and only needed to pick 20 people to go with them. They really couldn't figure it out. Hearing this, Genie Feng opened his eyes. His hands were still wrapped around the sword in front of his chest. He didn't move and just looked at everyone. Our mission is to lead the way and protect. If we really meet with danger that we can't solve, the employer will probably help us. However, whether they have the ability to do so, I'll make the final decision after meeting them. Leader, what if the employer isn't strong enough? Do we still accept this mission? A mercenary asked. If they don't have the ability to do so, then this mission is invalid and half of the commission they paid will go to us. So, overall, we won't lose anything. Let's wait and see. Genie Feng said, thinking as he waited. The person who came to talk to him was a man named Fan Lin from the medicine tower. When he told him about the strange rules and the mission, he was surprised. But last night, he didn't tell him how many people their employer would bring with them. And how strong was he? However, the commission he had to pay was considerable. Therefore, he was looking forward to this mission. Leader, after this mission is completed, we won't have to go out for missions this year, right? A man asked with a smile as he looked at the leader under the tree. Yes, we can rest after this mission. It's almost the end of the year. Genie Feng looked at them and asked, have you sent the commission back home? Hearing this, a burly man grinned. Hee, I got it last night and sent it back. My wife was worried when she got the commission and kept asking me about it. She even prepared this for me. He patted his chest and a clanging sound could be heard. It seemed to be something like black iron. Chapter 3767. The commission this time is high. The other brothers are envious that we were chosen. What a pity. The employer only asked for 20 people. Another mercenary said. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw a carriage slowly approaching. He immediately stood up and shouted, Captain, look, there's a carriage coming. Could it be the employer of this mission? Genie Feng, who was under the tree, heard this and looked towards the city gate. He then stood up and shouted in a low voice, line up. As soon as he finished speaking, the team quickly lined up in 2 straight rows. The carriage slowly approached. The driver was Leng Hua. Qin Xian and Leng Shuang sat in the carriage with Feng Jiu. On the left and right were Du Fan, Gu Mo, Hui Lang, and Luo Yu. They were all in the dark. Ying had not appeared yet. Captain Jean. Du Fan gently fanned himself with the fan in his hand as he walked towards Genie Feng. He smiled and said, we'll have to trouble you on this journey. Genie Feng looked at them. His eyes flashed as he asked, just the few of you? He originally thought that it would be a group of a clan. However, he didn't expect that there would only be one carriage and only a few people. His brows slightly furrowed for a moment. It must be known that there were less than 30 people including them. It wouldn't be easy for such a group to go into the depths of the savage wasteland. We have enough people. Du Fan smiled. He looked at Genie Feng and said, let me introduce myself first. I am Du Fan. This is Leng Hua, Gu Mo, Hui Lang, and Luo Yu. Du Fan paused. He looked at him and asked, how does Captain Jean plan to go into the savage wilderness? Hearing his introduction, Genie Feng looked at them. He then looked away and said, the savage wilderness is extremely dangerous. I want to know how much strength you have to protect yourselves. Our strength is above all of you. Du Fan said with a smile. It was obviously the truth. However, in the ears of the 20 mercenaries and Genie Feng, they felt that he was being arrogant. After all, they didn't believe that their strength would be stronger than mercenaries who had been out on missions all year round. Young Master Du, the savage wilderness ominous ground is not an ordinary place. If you are not careful, you might even lose your life inside. I hoped up before Genie Feng could finish speaking, he paused. This was because the man in front of him, who had a concerned smile on his face, had suddenly released a powerful pressure. This pressure instantly stunned him, causing him to be unable to speak. He only knew that the blood in his body was surging with the pressure, and other than him, no one else around him had noticed. To be able to release the pressure only to himself, to be able to control it without making a sound, just what kind of cultivation level did he have to be able to control such pressure so proficiently? His heart suddenly shook, and sweat seeped out of his forehead. After a while, the pressure that was as heavy as Mount Tai retracted. His legs couldn't help but soften, and he almost fell down. Commander Jean, our men are more than capable of protecting themselves. You don't have to worry about them. Du Fan reached out to help him up with a smile on his face. Genie Feng calmed himself down and said, I understand. Then let's set off. However, if we want to go to the savage wilderness ominous ground from here, I suggest that flying will save more time. Chapter 3768. Without waiting for Du Fan to step forward, Leng Hua, who was driving the carriage, got off first and lifted the curtain of the carriage. Genie Feng and the rest looked towards the carriage and saw a woman in black walk out with her head lowered. She jumped off the carriage, followed by a woman in white who also walked out with her head lowered, avoiding the roof of the carriage. Looking at the two women, they thought, the former is dressed in tight black clothes and has a cold and intimidating aura. She seems more like a personal bodyguard. The latter is dressed in white and has an outstanding appearance and temperament. Could she be the master they spoke of? Just as he was thinking, he saw the two beautiful women, one in black and one in white, lift the curtain of the carriage, and the other supported a red-clothed woman from inside. However, when they saw the red-clothed woman, they couldn't help but be startled, and their faces were filled with astonishment. The reason for that was because the red-clothed woman's figure was round and her belly was slightly bulging. From the looks of it, she should be several months pregnant. Yet, such a woman actually came out from the carriage. Could it be that she was also someone who was going to the savage wilderness ominous grounds? Young Master Du, you can't be telling me that this madam is going as well, right? Genie Feng's expression darkened. He felt that this was child's play. How could a pregnant woman go to such a dangerous place? That's right. Du Fan replied with a smile and introduced, this is my master. Commander Jean, you can address my master as Madame Shenyuan. She's already several months pregnant, but she needs the Shui Ling flower, so she has no choice but to go out. If possible, they didn't want their master to come out like this. After all, they couldn't be at ease going to such a place. Genie Feng's face darkened as he said, even cultivators like us have to be extremely careful in that kind of place, and we don't dare to say that there won't be any accidents. You actually want to bring a pregnant woman in? You're trying to kill her. Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled and her clear eyes fell on Genie Feng. She slowly said, Commander Jean, there's no need to worry. Although I'm pregnant, it won't stop me from entering the ominous desolate grounds. Hearing the voice, Genie Feng turned around and looked at the lady in red. His eyes flashed and a hint of surprise appeared in his eyes. He had traveled extensively and had seen many beauties. The cold and elegant woman in tight black clothes and the gentle woman in white clothes were both rare beauties, but compared to the woman in red before him, they seemed to pale in comparison. Even though the woman before him was pregnant, her peerlessly beautiful appearance was exquisite and seductive. Her languid expression carried a wisp of charm, and when her clear eyes swept over, they flowed with a moving brilliance. However, even though her appearance was peerlessly beautiful and her figure could topple cities, it caused others to not have the slightest thought of profaning her. It was all because she possessed a peerlessly noble and awe-inspiring aura. That sort of awe-inspiring majesty that seemed to be innate in her bones, accompanied by a sweep of her clear eyes, instantly caused others to avoid her gaze and lower their heads. She was as dazzling as the sun, and no one dared to look at her directly. "Greetings, Madame Xianyuan." Ji Feng hurriedly cupped his hands and bowed. After bowing almost instinctively, he was stunned again. Because the respect and reverence he felt from the bottom of his heart towards her as an expert who had occupied a high position for a long time caused him to be slightly stunned. Chapter 3769. Yes. About half a year ago, I led a team to the depths of the savage wilderness. However, the terrain there was extremely dangerous and there were also powerful beasts guarding it. We couldn't get close. As he spoke, he glanced at Feng Jiu and hesitated before saying, "I don't think it's suitable for Madame to go there." Hearing this, Feng Jiu smiled slightly. "It's fine. Leader Jin, you just need to lead the way. My people will take care of the rest." Seeing that she was so insistent, Ji Feng didn't say anything else. He only said, "We'll prepare to fly on our swords. If Madame feels unwell and needs to rest, just call us. Then let's take the flying ship." Feng Jiu smiled. With a wave of his sleeve, a flying ship appeared beside them. Seeing that low-key and luxurious flying ship, the mercenaries' eyes flashed. A spaceship like this was worth a lot of money. They were originally worried that Madame Xianyuan would have trouble moving around due to her big belly. However, it seemed that they had prepared beforehand. Feng Jiu, Qin Xian, Leng Shuang, and the others boarded the flying ship first. Leng Hua and Gu Mo followed behind. Wen Yi, dressed in black, suddenly appeared beside Hui Lang. The mercenaries couldn't help but be surprised. They sized him up. Where did this person come from? "Everyone, please." Du Fan gestured for them to board the flying ship. Everyone looked at each other before boarding the flying ship one after another. After boarding the flying ship, they saw that the furnishings and things inside were all first class. Their hearts trembled slightly. The employer this time wasn't an ordinary rich person. Every item on the flying ship was priceless. It wasn't something that ordinary people could get their hands on. As the flying ship started, it slowly rose until it reached the clouds. It shuttled through the clouds and headed towards the savage wilderness. Compared to Leng Hua and the others who were relaxed, the 20 mercenaries were more restrained. Ji Feng glanced at the crowd and said, "Sit down." Only after the commander had spoken did everyone sit down. They looked at the woman in red who was leisurely lying on the soft couch, then looked at the two beautiful women sitting beside her. They looked at each other in dismay. They had been on so many missions, but this was the first time that they didn't even need to fly their own swords. If they continued at this pace, they would have an easy time until they entered the savage wilderness. Compared to the other mercenaries, Captain Ji Feng was secretly sizing them up. The more he interacted with them, the more he felt that they were not ordinary. How could people not know that there were such people in Spirit Immortal City? He narrowed his eyes and thought to himself, the owner of the small house in the center of the lake has been the talk of the town recently, but no one has seen his true face, and no one knows his origin. But now, he vaguely guessed that their employer this time was the owner of the small house in the center of the lake, and that Madame Xianyuan was the owner of the small house in the center of the lake. However, he had never imagined that the mysterious and unfathomable medicine tower was actually related to the small building at the center of the lake. He reckoned that no one in Spirit Immortal City would have thought of it. The flying ship shuttled through the clouds without stopping to rest. It wasn't until the sky gradually darkened that the flying ship found a place to stop. "We'll rest here tonight. We'll continue tomorrow," Du Fan said to everyone, then smiled and said, "I'll have to trouble the brothers of the mercenary group to see if there are any wild animals that can be stewed into soup when hunting. Help us catch one back." Chapter 3770. The mercenaries disembarked from the spaceship and quickly set up a fire in the surrounding area. They also caught some prey. Because of Du Fan's instructions, the mercenaries prepared a wild pheasant and gave it to Fengjiu and the others. Therefore, Qin Xian added some nourishing herbs into the pheasant and boiled it into chicken soup for Fengjiu. Under the night sky, the night breeze was chilly. After eating, the 20 mercenaries sat around the fire and took turns keeping watch. Fengjiu returned to the cabin to rest first. Du Fan and the others also left Ing Yi and Hui Lang to keep watch. The night passed peacefully. The next morning, they continued their journey. 2 days later, in the evening, their spaceship stopped in a small forest. They were resting in the forest when they heard cries for help and screams. Then, they heard chaotic footsteps running towards them. Help! Help! Ah! Help! Immediately, the 20 mercenaries quickly surrounded Fengjiu and cautiously looked in the direction of the sound. They saw a few children around 6 or 7 years old in tattered clothes crying and running in the forest. They wiped their tears as they ran. When they fell, they scrambled to their feet and continued running. When they saw Fengjiu and the others in front, they quickly ran in their direction. Help! Jini Feng saw that the people chasing the children were 2 cultivators and couldn't help but frown. The children had shocking wounds on their bodies, but even so, they still ran very fast. At this moment, one of the cultivators quickly jumped in front of the children and blocked their path. Let's see where you can run to. The tall and thin cultivator said sinisterly. As if he didn't see the mercenaries and the spaceship, he approached one of the children and grabbed him by the collar, lifting him up and slamming him heavily to the ground. Ah! The child cried out in alarm. His hands and feet curled up slightly to protect his body when he fell to the ground. At the same time, he rolled towards the mercenaries and shouted in panic, "Help, help us!" Seeing this scene, the mercenaries didn't move. They only frowned and secretly kept their guard up. Why would there suddenly be a few children being chased by cultivators in this place? These children only had a low cultivation base, but their movement techniques were extremely fast. Furthermore, to be able to survive the pursuit of the 2 cultivators, it was clear that they were not ordinary children. Their mission this time was to protect Madame Xianyuan and at the same time, bring them to look for the Shui Linghua. Therefore, if it was possible, they did not want to get involved in other unrelated matters. Fengjiu sat by the fire roasting game. She didn't even look over there. She just seriously roasted the meat while adding spices. When it was done, she even cut off a piece with a knife and tasted it. Ah! Pooh! A child was kicked in the abdomen, and his body flew towards the mercenaries. At the same time, he spat out a mouthful of blood. He cried out in pain, his body twitched, and instinctively curled up. Du Fan walked out and gently waved the fan in his hand. He looked at the children and the 2 cultivators with a scornful smile. If you want to fight, just do it. Why do you have to put on such a clumsy show? Chapter 3771. Swoosh swoosh. The arrow shot out from the sleeve was extremely short, and its speed was extremely fast. Moreover, it was different from the sleeve arrows of the past. The sleeve arrow shot out from the child's arm was the size of an iron wire, but it was extremely hard and sharp. When the sleeve arrow shot out, only 2 extremely fast cold lights could be seen shooting out. The arrow was not shot at the mercenaries, but at Fengjiu, who was roasting meat by the fire. Be careful. The arrow shot past Jini Feng's cheek. He could even feel the sharp aura of the arrow. His cheek felt as if it had been cut by a sharp wind blade, and a trace of blood seeped out. He wanted to block the 2 streaks of cold light, but no matter how fast he was, he could not outrun the attack. He could only shout out a warning. Fengjiu was still sitting there without moving, as if he did not notice anything. He did not care about the 2 streaks of cold light at all. Just as the two small sleeve arrows flew past Genie Feng and were about a meter away from him, they were blocked by Du Fan's fan. Clang! The sound of metal colliding rang out. After colliding with the fan in Du Fan's hand, they fell to the ground. They were two sharp sleeve arrows that were as thin as iron wires. Moreover, the arrowheads were emitting a pitch-black light. Du Fan smiled, but there wasn't the slightest hint of a smile in his narrowed eyes. He looked at the child who quickly jumped up from the ground and the black-clothed cultivators who emerged from the surroundings. He slowly walked past the mercenaries and walked to the front, saying, "You guys have some guts." His soft words were filled with cold killing intent. He looked at the people who surrounded them and asked, "How do you want to die? Have you decided?" A black-clothed man wearing a mask walked out from the group of black-clothed men. He stared at Du Fan with a sinister gaze and asked, "Do you know who we are? You've been following us since last night. Who else could you be but from that assassin organization?" Du Fan glanced at the children as he spoke. He smiled and said coldly, "I just didn't expect you to use such small children." Hearing this, the eyes of the black-robed man, who was the leader, flickered. Those who are related to the medicine tower are indeed not simple. He took a step back and glanced at the low-key yet luxurious spaceship. He raised his hand, and the men in black didn't step forward. Instead, they raised the hidden arrows in their hands. Every arrow here is smeared with poison. Once you are grazed, you will bleed to death from your 7 orifices. If you don't want to die too miserably, you'd better surrender obediently. His voice paused and his gaze swept across the crowd. Then, he said in a sinister voice, "As long as you press the button, every sleeve arrow will shoot out more than just a few." "Oh. So, you want to attack us because of our relationship with the medicine tower?" Fengjiu looked back at the person who spoke, his eyes full of surprise. "Not bad." The leader was surprised by Fengjiu's beauty. Looking at her gorgeous face, he said, "Your heads, as well as the heads of those people from the medicine tower, have all been added to the kill list." "I see." Fengjiu nodded in understanding. Then, he said to Du Fan and the others, "Kill them. Also, send a message back. Tell them that I want this organization to disappear." "Yes." Chapter 3772. The 20 mercenaries widened their eyes in shock as they watched the corpses fall one by one. A huge wave of shock surged in their hearts, and their bodies trembled almost imperceptibly. The scene in front of them was like an Azura harvesting lives. The other party did not have the chance to attack at all. They did not even have time to react before they fell one by one. The sword light swept out like a shadow, and the movement technique was like a ghost. In the blink of an eye, the 100 or so black-clothed assassins surrounding them were all killed. There was no hesitation in attacking. After one round, they only felt a gust of wind sweep past them. When they looked again, they saw corpses strewn all over the ground, and Madame Xianyuan was still standing beside her as if she had not moved at all. Genie Feng's eyes narrowed when he saw the scene in front of him. If he had known that Du Fan's strength was very strong after he had witnessed their strength that day, then the scene in front of him was even more shocking. This kind of strength was not just very strong, but extremely strong. Even in the Spirit Immortal City, there were not many who could be compared to this kind of strength. No, even the powerhouses of the Soaring Firmament Immortal sect would not be a match for them. In an instant, the mercenaries looked at Fengjiu and the others with reverence in their eyes. This kind of strength was enough to make them revere them. "Leader Jean, I'll have to trouble your men to clean up." Du Fan smiled. His gentle voice broke the mercenaries' stiff expressions and allowed them to return to their senses. "Yes, I'll get them to clean up now." Almost instinctively, Genie Feng's response turned into obedience. He returned to his senses and quickly arranged for everyone to clean up the scene. No one had any objections. No one felt that it was too much to ask the top mercenaries to do such a thing. They almost instinctively obeyed and quickly cleaned up the scene. After the corpses were cleaned up, Genie Feng took out a large bag of items from the assassins and handed it over. He said to Fengjiu, "Madame Xianyuan, these are the valuables from those people." Fengjiu cut a piece of meat and ate it. He glanced at the valuables and slowly said, "These things are for your brothers. Just keep it." Hearing this, Genie Feng was stunned and said, "This is against the rules. Moreover, the commission that Madame Xianyuan paid us for this trip is very high. If we didn't hunt it ourselves, the treasures will belong to you." She smiled and said, "It's fine. We don't lack these things anyway. Take it. After all, it's quite inconvenient to protect a pregnant woman like me." But Genie Feng still wanted to say something, but someone put a hand on his shoulder. "Regiment Commander Jean, my master said to take it, so just take it." Du Fan patted him on the shoulder and said with a smile, "However, Regiment Commander Jean, you have to remind me not to say a word about what we've seen and heard on this trip. My master is a person who prefers peace and quiet. He doesn't like to be disturbed." "Yes," Genie Feng replied. He glanced at Fengjiu and didn't refuse. After thanking him, he took the items to the mercenaries and gave them a share. At the same time, he passed down the message. Chapter 3773. Madame Xianyuan, did you already know that we were being targeted? He noticed that she had a calm expression on her face, as if everything was under her control. His heart skipped a beat. Could it be that they already knew that they were being targeted by the assassin organization? You can say that. Fengjiu smiled and said, "I knew that the assassin organization was targeting the medicine tower, but I didn't think that they would be able to find out about our relationship with the medicine tower." Hearing this, Genie Feng recalled what the leader had said. They were already on the kill list, and his expression froze. "Now that you're on the kill list, I'm afraid that there will be more people targeting you in the future. It would be one thing if they didn't know, but since they know, we'll just let them cross our names off the kill list." Fengjiu said casually, then smiled and said, "Why don't we destroy a few of their forces to teach them a lesson?" Leng Hua heard this and said, "Master, don't worry. I've already sent a message back. They'll deal with it as soon as possible." Fengjiu replied. After eating some food, he stood up and walked around. After a while, he returned to the spaceship to rest. They didn't encounter anything else in the following days, and arrived at the savage wilderness fearsome grounds peacefully. Because they didn't recognize the place where the Xueling flower was, they could only walk into the savage wilderness fearsome grounds from the spaceship. "Madame Xianyuan, there are all kinds of ferocious beasts here. You have to be careful of small poisonous insects, snakes, and ants. Some plants are also poisonous, so you can't touch them casually. Wild fruits can't be eaten casually either." Although Genie Feng felt that they should know this, he still reminded them. Fengjiu smiled and replied, "We'll be careful. Then we'll enter from here. Every time we come back, we'll leave a mark in the forest. We just have to find the mark and follow the path." As Genie Feng spoke, 10 of the mercenaries walked at the back, 10 of them walked at the front, and Fengjiu and the rest walked in the middle. After all, she was pregnant with twins. Even walking on a flat road was tiring, let alone in a place like the forest. Fengjiu walked with them for an entire morning, and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. "Master, why don't we stop and rest?" Leng Hua and the others' hearts ached. They had only rested for a short while, and they were worried that their master's body couldn't take it. Fengjiu chuckled. "I'm not that weak. I'm just a little tired. I'm still in good health." After all, she was anxious to find the Xueling. She didn't want to stay here for too long. First, she was worried that the Xueling flower would be plucked by others. Second, she hoped that after this matter was settled, she would go back. She wanted was, to take care of her pregnancy. Genie Feng turned around and glanced at Fengjiu. Madam Xianyuan, let's stop and take a break. There's a spring not far ahead. You can wash your face or something. Fengjiu. The group walked forward for about 100 meters before stopping, because there was already a team resting at the mouth of the spring. Chapter 3774. No one objected to this arrangement and sat down to rest. Feng Jiu sat under the tree and took out some water to drink. Then, she leaned against the tree and rested with her eyes half closed. She didn't open her eyes until she heard a strange voice. Not far away, Genie Feng was greeting and laughing with a middle-aged man. It seemed like they knew each other. Beside the middle-aged man were 2 men and 2 women. At this moment, they were sizing them up. When their gazes landed on her stomach, one of the women cried out in surprise. "Ah! She's pregnant and yet she came to the savage wilderness? Xin, don't be so presumptuous." The middle-aged man shouted and nodded apologetically at Fengjiu. "Madam, please don't take offense. The little girl doesn't know any better." Fengjiu smiled. "It's fine. What she said is the truth." She retracted her gaze and covered her stomach with one hand. She closed her eyes and rested. "Leader Jean, we're considered acquaintances. There's no need to be so distant. I've asked someone to prepare some barbecued meat. Why don't you come and eat together?" The middle-aged man invited with a smile. "It's fine. I've already asked my men to hunt. There'll be food soon. We didn't come out on our own this time. We have a mission, so it's inconvenient." Genie Feng declined with a smile. Hearing this, the middle-aged man nodded. "Since that's the case, I won't force you. We won't disturb you any further." He cupped his hands and looked at Fengjiu and the others. Only then did he bring his men back to rest. As they walked back, one of the women couldn't help but whisper, "Those people are so strange. They actually brought a pregnant woman to a place like this? Moreover, they don't even add up to 30 people. It's not even half of our team." The man beside her looked serious and said, "Other than the 20 mercenaries, the others don't look like guards. They look more like the young masters and young ladies of aristocratic families. This is the first time I've heard of a pregnant woman daring to come to the savage wilderness. She's really too reckless." The other man shook his head as he spoke. Even a skilled cultivator would not be able to escape unscathed in this place. However, that woman was pregnant and her belly was already so big, yet she still dared to come to such a place. "Alright, don't meddle too much in other people's business. Take care of yourself. Don't forget why we're here this time," the middle-aged man said, glancing at them warningly. The few people who originally wanted to say something, after hearing his words, did not say anything more and returned to their resting area to sit down. However, their gazes still could not help but look towards Fengjiu and the others. The 2 groups of people rested here until the next morning. The mercenaries continued to lead Fengjiu and the others forward. However, not long after they left, the group behind them caught up with them. "Leader, why are they taking the same path as us?" One of the mercenaries looked back and asked in a low voice. Genie Feng's eyes flashed. He looked back and said, "Maybe it's just along the way. After all, this place is so big. Just because they're walking behind us doesn't mean that they're taking the same path as us. Even if they're taking the same path, they're going their own ways." Chapter 3775. "Captain, we've been the ones fighting in the front whenever there's any danger along the way, and they've been taking advantage of us without doing anything. It's really immoral," a mercenary said as he glanced at the people behind him with a terrible expression. "Captain, why don't we let them go first? Or we can ask them what they're up to," another mercenary chimed in. "Yeah, we've been killing the ferocious beasts in the front. Our brothers are all injured and stained with blood, but they've been following behind us without doing anything. They're not our employers, so it's really annoying that they're taking advantage of us like this. And they've been following us all the way, as if we're being watched. We can see their team everywhere. I really don't know what they're up to." Hearing them talking about this, Genie Feng furrowed his brows slightly. In fact, he was aware of his brother's dissatisfaction. They were paid to do their jobs, and protecting Madame Xianyuan and the others was their job. But the team behind them had been following them all the time. It looked like they were also protecting them and leading the way for them. Most importantly, the other party had been following them leisurely, as if they were doing it on purpose. Thinking of this, he turned his head around to take a look. After a moment of silence, he said, "We'll just walk our own path and do what we're supposed to do. It's the same even if they're not following us. So you guys shouldn't pay attention to them. Just treat them as if they're invisible. The path toward heaven is not ours, and they're free to do whatever they want. From another perspective, even if they're not following us, we'll still kill the ferocious beasts when we encounter them. So it's the same whether they're following us or not." He tried to make them understand and not pay attention to the details. In his opinion, all they needed to do was to do what they were supposed to do, regardless of whether the team behind them was following them or not. If that was the case, why should they complain that the team behind them was taking advantage of them? Thinking this way was actually a problem with their mentality. The mercenaries hadn't fully adjusted their mentality yet. "But Captain. Your captain is right." Feng Jiu chuckled. He glanced at Genie Feng and the other mercenaries and said with a smile, "You guys should learn from your captain. His attitude is very proper." Hearing her speak, the mercenaries were a little embarrassed and lowered their heads for a moment. After all, they were fussing about those unpresentable things and were indeed a little narrow-minded. Genie Feng didn't expect her to speak. After being stunned for a moment, he walked up to her side with a smile and asked, "Madame Xianyuan, you didn't rest much along the way. Is your body okay with walking with everyone like this?" "Well, it's okay. I'm in good health. I'll walk more as an exercise. It's good for pregnant people." She smiled and walked at a leisurely pace with one hand covering her stomach. Leng Shuang and Qin Xian, who were walking on her left and right, cut off the surrounding branches to prevent the branches from scratching their master. "Regiment Commander Jean, how much longer until we reach the location of the Xueling flower? After such a long time, would the Xueling flower still be there? Or will it be taken away by someone else?" Chapter 3776. Although Fan Lin had told her that the place where the Xueling flower was found by the mercenaries was extremely dangerous and guarded by a powerful beast, it was impossible for an average person to pluck it. However, the world was so big and there were so many powerful people everywhere. No one could guarantee that the Xueling flower would still be there without being plucked. Genie Feng pondered for a moment and said, "It's hard to say. I can't guarantee that it's still there. However, there hasn't been any news of the Xueling flower appearing outside, so it's very likely that it's still there because the beast guarding it has reached the 7th level of the divine beast. It's extremely ferocious and its combat power is even more shocking." He didn't give a definite answer because he wasn't sure either. However, he knew that the Xueling flower was very difficult to pick. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared to pick it when they saw it. Thinking of this, he looked at Feng Jiu and asked, "Madame Xianyuan, I heard that if the Xueling flower is kept in a special ice box after being picked, its medicinal effects will not fade away. Is that true?" Feng Jiu shook her head slightly and said, "That's only said to sell the Xueling flower to some people who collect spiritual herbs for auction. The Xueling flower's medicinal effects are very unique. Even if it's kept in a special ice box, part of its medicinal effects will still fade away. Of course, it doesn't mean that the medicinal effects will be completely lost. It's just that compared to using it in a special time, the medicinal effects will be greatly reduced. The Xueling flower's growth period is 100 years. After 100 years of growth, it will bloom. The flowering period is 1 year. It's most effective when it's in full bloom. She smiled and continued, however, the Shueling flower is a precious spiritual herb. Unless it's an extremely precious medicine, it's usually not used. Hearing her words, Genie Feng's eyes flashed and asked, Madame Xianyuan, you're so proficient in medicinal herbs. Are you a pharmacist? You can say that. She smiled and didn't elaborate. Genie Feng thought of Fan Lin from the medicine building and how the second master of the Yu family, who had been injured in the heart, was saved. He vaguely guessed that this Madame Xianyuan in front of him should have good medical skills. Perhaps it was because they had traveled together for a long time, but seeing that the mercenaries in front had stopped to rest, the middle-aged leader of the family who didn't come forward originally brought a few young men and women, as well as an old man to the front. Regiment Commander Jean, the middle-aged man smiled and cupped his hands together. He looked at Fengjiu and the others and nodded slightly. Ouyang family head, what's the matter? Jin Yifeng asked, his gaze landing on the middle-aged man. It's like this. Along the way, I realized that we seem to be taking the same path, so I'd like to take the liberty to ask, why don't we travel together? This way, if you encounter a ferocious beast attack, we can also help. As soon as the middle-aged man finished speaking, the elderly man beside him stroked his beard and smiled, Commander Jean, thanks to you, we had an easier time walking at the back. However, we want to say that it's not that we want to follow you all the way. We're going to the depths of the forest and we're taking the same path. So, we hope that you can reconsider. If we're going the same way, we'll travel together. This way, if anything happens, we can help each other. Chapter 3777. Fengjiu looked up at the old man and raised her eyebrows. You want to travel with us? Actually, we see that we're all going the same way. Since that's the case, we can't keep walking at the back and let you block the danger in front. The old man said with a smile on his face. He looked amiable, but his attitude towards Fengjiu was not very respectful. After all, in his eyes, she was just a woman, and a pregnant woman who was still restless. So it's like that. Fengjiu replied indifferently. She looked at the old man with a smile and said, if you don't think it's good to keep walking behind us, then you can walk in front of us. Hearing this, the old man was startled. A trace of astonishment flashed across his eyes. He clearly did not expect her to say this. The young men and women beside her also looked at Fengjiu in astonishment. Normally speaking, if they had already said so, shouldn't they have gladly agreed? After all, there were close to 100 people around them, and all of them were top experts. On the other hand, they had 20 mercenaries, a few other young masters, 2 women, and the pregnant woman in red. It was one thing for them to walk outside, but it would be very difficult for them to enter the depths of the forest. Now that they had extended an olive branch to them, the other party did not appreciate it. When the middle-aged man with the surname Ouyang heard Fengjiu's words, he frowned slightly. He felt that this woman was all beauty and no brains. Originally, he saw that she had an extraordinary bearing and exuded the aura of a superior. He thought that she was someone important, but who knew that she would speak like this? His impression of her immediately plummeted. In the cultivation world, there was no lack of beautiful women. Even if this woman had a heaven-shaking appearance, she only had looks but no wisdom or strength. She would only become a plaything for the strong. They did not need to pay too much attention to this kind of woman. Thus, he said to Jin Yifeng, Captain Jean, since it's like this, we'll be going first. With that, he left with his men. Jin Yifeng shook his head inwardly as he watched them turn and leave. He could tell that they were extremely displeased by Madame Xuanyuan's response. However, in his opinion, Madame Xianyuan did not have any ill intentions. She was merely speaking the truth. If he was embarrassed to follow behind them, then he would walk in front of them. On the main road, everyone went their own way, and no one would say anything more. However, When the people from the Ouyang family heard Madame Xuanyuan's words, they felt that she did not know how to appreciate favors. That was because they simply did not know how powerful the people beside Madame Xuanyuan were. That night, Fengjiu and the others rested on the spot. After entering this place, they all rested at night and walked during the day. This way, they could have a good rest and avoid potential dangers at night. As for the people of the Ouyang clan, because they were one step ahead of them, they didn't stop to rest that night and continued to move forward. Chapter 3778. Madame Xuanyuan, there's a faint smell of blood in the surroundings. There are also traces of blood in the weeds. I suggest we stop for a while. I'll send someone to scout ahead before we continue. Ji Nifeng cautiously said to Fengjiu. Fengjiu nodded when she heard this. Alright, let's rest here for a while. She was also a little tired from walking. The ground in the forest was uneven and there were many branches and weeds. Her body couldn't take it after walking for a long time. Seeing that she agreed, Ji Nifeng immediately ordered 2 mercenaries to scout ahead. The others stood guard in the surroundings in case danger suddenly appeared. Fengjiu found a place to sit down. She took out a spiritual fruit and ate it to replenish her energy. She casually scanned her surroundings and paused when her gaze swept past a certain spot. Mistress, are you hungry? Do you want to eat some porridge or something? Qin Xan asked from the side. No need, I'll just eat a fruit. After walking for such a long time, her appetite wasn't good. Even if she cooked something, she wouldn't be able to eat it. Lang Hua and the others also saw the leopard lying in the grass staring at them. However, they didn't take any action. In their opinion, as long as the leopard didn't threaten their mistress and didn't take the initiative to attack, they wouldn't kill it. Moreover, with their strength, killing a leopard was only a matter of a moment. Mistress, if you're really tired from walking, let Tun Yun come out and carry you. Lang Hua looked at Fengjiu and said. He saw that his mistress had difficulty sitting down with her big belly, let alone walking with them. However, they had reminded her several times along the way, but she still insisted on walking. Fengjiu couldn't help but chuckle when she heard Lang Hua mention this again. Lang Hua, you're really like an old mother. How many times have you nagged me along the way? She smiled and shook her head. Don't worry. I know my body well. Although it's tiring to walk like this, it won't do any harm to me and the child in my belly. On the contrary, since I'm pregnant with twins, it'll be easier for me to give birth in the future if I walk more. She leaned against the tree and exhaled softly. If I'm a little tired now, it'll be safer for me to give birth in the future. What's more, I'm a cultivator. How can I not be able to handle such a small matter? While they were chatting, the mercenaries weren't in the mood to listen because they were all on high alert. Their eyes were fixed on their surroundings and the 2 leopards lying in the grass staring at them. The weeds in this area were slightly dry and had a reddish-yellow color. From afar, they looked like withered weeds, but in fact, the roots of these weeds still contained moisture. However, the color of the weeds was very similar to the leopard's half-golden fur. They were also the leopard's camouflage tools. If it weren't for the powerful and ferocious aura emitted by the 2 leopards, they probably wouldn't have discovered them so quickly. However, what puzzled them was that the 2 leopards, which were estimated to be at the level of divine beasts, were actually lying in the grass about 100 meters away from them, staring at them, but they didn't make any further movements. What do you think these 2 leopards want to do? A vigilant mercenary asked the person beside him in a low voice. He was extremely puzzled. Chapter 3779. Yes, we know. Our leader has also instructed us. Their leader had already secretly instructed them that Madame Xuanyuan was pregnant. No matter what happened, she was to be taken care of first. Some of them already had wives and children. When they saw Madame Xianyuan coming to such a dangerous place with her pregnant belly, they naturally paid more attention to her. Jinifeng, who was leading the mercenaries to pay attention to their surroundings, also felt a little strange at this moment. He had been traveling for so many years and had seen all kinds of situations, but he had never seen a situation where two powerful leopards were staring at them without attacking. He knew that the two leopards had been lying there without moving, but their two pairs of ferocious and bloodthirsty eyes were staring at them closely. Leopards were extremely fast, especially those that had reached the level of mythological beast. They could almost be regarded as overlords here. Even if they encountered tiger beasts or lion beasts that were slightly stronger than them, they would not retreat half a step. But what was going on right now? Could it be that they felt that they were more terrifying than the tiger beasts and lion beasts? When he thought of this, his heart skipped a beat. He could not help but look at Fengjiu and the rest who were not far behind him. He saw that Madame Xianyuan, Du Fan, and the others were chatting casually. He didn't know what they were talking about, but they all had smiles on their faces. There wasn't even a trace of nervousness or worry on their faces. He thought that if these two leopards were afraid of something, it was probably them. The mercenaries kept watch while Fengjiu and the rest rested. After about 30 minutes, the two mercenaries who were scouting the way returned. They looked at the two leopards in surprise and then quickly came to Jinifeng. "Leader, there are traces of a battle about 500 meters ahead. There are some corpses on the ground that could not be dealt with in time. They look like the people from the Ouyang family. There are beast claw marks on the ground and tree trunks. It doesn't look like they were ambushed by other opponents. They should have encountered a powerful beast." The mercenary paused for a moment before continuing, "However, we did not find any traces of them after scouting the surrounding area. However, judging from the messy weeds that were trampled on, they seem to have gone forward. The two of us did some research and felt that one of them should be leading the way. They should be taking the same route as us. Therefore, we speculate that they are most likely going for the Xueling flower." Hearing this, Jinifeng nodded and said to them, "Rest for a while and stay alert. I'll go inform Madame Xianyuan and the others." After that, he walked towards Fengjiu and the others. Jinifeng was about to speak when Fengjiu spoke first. "I've heard what you said. Since that's the case, let's speed up." Leng Shuang, who was standing beside her, helped her stand up. She patted her dress and looked at Jinifeng, saying, "On this trip, I am determined to get the Xueling flower. I don't want any accidents to happen and make me happy for nothing." Hearing this, Jinifeng's expression turned serious. He said, "Then we can only speed up. However, Madame Xianyuan, your body." Before he could finish, Madame Xianyuan waved her hand, and a rainbow glass feather floated in front of her. It spun in a circle and lifted her up, allowing her to sit comfortably on the flying feather. Chapter 3780. Seeing this, Jinifeng immediately shouted to the mercenaries, "Move forward quickly." With that, he took the lead to open a path for everyone. The mercenaries split into two groups, one in front and one at the back, guarding Fengjiu and the others in the middle. However, as their pace quickened, the people at the back gradually couldn't keep up with the people in front. Even the 10 mercenaries at the front fell behind. They wiped the sweat off their foreheads, looked at each other, and started to run. At the same time, they mobilized the spiritual power in their bodies to increase their speed. Night fell. Somewhere in the forest, the people of the Ouyang family were in a tense state. At this time, they weren't as arrogant as they were when they met Fengjiu and the others a few days ago. Instead, they were in a sorry state, and their faces were filled with nervousness and unconcealable fear. The people around them guarded vigilantly, paying attention to their surroundings. Beside the fire, the pale and weak Ouyang family head leaned against a tree trunk and looked at the fire with a solemn expression. His robes were torn and his body was stained with blood, especially the bandage wound on his shoulder. The white bandages were stained red and dried by the blood. Although the wound could not be seen, it could be seen from the blood-stained bandages that the injury was not light. The few young men and women sitting next to him didn't have any serious injuries, but there were many small wounds. Their bodies were tense, and their eyes were filled with panic and fear. With the slightest movement around them, they instinctively tightened their grip on their weapons and quickly looked back. The old man's expression was a little dignified. He looked at another middle-aged man who was sitting silently and finally said, "Everyone, be alert. We've already come this far, and it won't be long before we reach our destination. This mission concerns the future of the entire Ouyang family. Even if there's only one person left, we have to do our best to complete it." Everyone listened, but no one spoke. They just lowered their heads. They knew that the savage wilderness was dangerous, but they didn't expect it to be this dangerous. Nearly 100 of them had come here, and more than 10 people had died. Especially in the battle 2 nights ago, they saw with their own eyes a few people being torn apart by the ferocious beasts. They were bitten to death by the ferocious beasts. Their arms were torn off by the sharp teeth of the ferocious beasts. It was a ghastly sight. Recalling the scene of that night, the young men and women couldn't help but tremble. It was too terrifying. They watched as their clansmen were torn to pieces by the ferocious beasts. It was too terrifying. They still remembered the miserable and terrified shrill cries of their clansmen that were bitten and dragged away by the ferocious beasts, and their cries for help when they were in despair. Even now, it still caused their hairs to stand on end and their hearts to tremble with fear. Those were their clansmen, and at that moment, when they saw the despair and fear in their eyes, none of them dared to take a step forward to save them. They could only retreat while watching them die helplessly and hopelessly. Did you hear that? Seeing that no one responded, the old man asked again with a solemn expression. Yes, I heard it. Only then did everyone respond. In fact, they were not confident in their hearts. They did not even know if they could walk in there and find what they were looking for. Awo. Chapter 3781. The old man saw that they all stood up instinctively, their bodies tensed up as if they were facing a great enemy. He couldn't help but shout, "Sit down. What are you nervous about? That sound is still far away from here." Hearing his words, everyone sat down awkwardly. However, no one was completely at ease. Instead, they were paying attention to whether the howling sound was approaching. As the night deepened, their mental and physical exhaustion caused them to gradually fall asleep. In the second half of the night, when they were sleeping soundly, one of the night watchers suddenly screamed and fell to the ground. Ah! That scream rang out, startling everyone awake. They quickly jumped up and shouted, "What happened?" Hiss. However, what answered them was not the voice of their clansmen. Instead, it was the hissing sound of venomous snakes sticking out their tongues. The sound was chaotic and came from far away. It seemed that there were more than 1 or 2 snakes. Not good. It's a group of snakes. Ah! It was unknown who cried out in alarm. Following that, his neck was bitten by a flying poisonous snake. That person screamed in pain. His hands tightly grasped the snake's head and body, wanting to shake it off. However, because the poisonous snake refused to let go, he was unable to shake it off. Thus, he exerted force with both hands and snapped the poisonous snake at its weakest point. Only the sound of flesh and blood being torn apart could be heard. In the dark night, the stench of snake blood spread in the air. In the next moment, the wound on the man's neck quickly turned black and purple. His lips and face quickly turned purple. He screamed and howled in pain. Black venomous blood flowed out of his 7 orifices. Ah! Hiss, hiss. Be careful. Everyone be careful. This snake is highly venomous. Ah! Cries of alarm rang out in the night. The people of the Ouyang clan were all in a mess. In the dark night, the venomous snakes that were as fast as lightning flew out to bite them. Once bitten, they would all die in an instant. Who? Suddenly, the sound of flames could be heard. A bonfire was burning in the surroundings. Someone shouted, "Be alert! Quickly alert! Everyone come over here!" The older men quickly stabilized the situation. After a moment of chaos, the remaining 40 to 50 people all stood in the fire circle. Under the burning flames, the smell of medicine quickly spread in the air. The venomous snakes that were originally coiled around the branches, wrapped around the corpses, and hidden in the weeds quickly retreated after smelling the smell in the air. Although they retreated, they still did not leave. They were still circling not far away and staring at them. The snake's mouth was slightly open, its venomous tongue sticking out, making a terrifying hissing sound. Everyone looked around in panic. Cold sweat appeared on their foreheads. They were afraid that the snake would suddenly jump through the flames and pounce on them. The old man steadied his mind and glanced at the Ouyang family head. Then, he looked at the middle-aged man beside him with a dignified expression and asked, "Didn't you sprinkle the snake repellent all around? Why are there still snakes attacking us?" The middle-aged man's expression was not good at this time. He looked around and said, "These snakes are not ordinary snakes. Even if ordinary snakes are extremely poisonous, there will be a time for them to slow down. They won't be like this, where the venom will rush to the head and kill people instantly." Chapter 3782. Hearing this, everyone's expression instantly turned solemn. They looked at the corpses on the ground and one of them hesitated for a moment before saying, "Patriarch, Grand Elder, I think it's better for us to go back first. If this goes on, I'm afraid that we'll all die here. Dying here is one thing, but the problem is that we're all going to die before we even complete our mission. It's really not worth it. I also suggest that we retreat." "Me too." For a moment, everyone was saying the same thing. Only the few men and women who were following beside them did not speak. However, they all pursed their lips and the look in their eyes could not be concealed. If they could, they also wanted to leave this place. This place was too dangerous. It was already very difficult for them to reach this place. If they continued to walk, they were afraid that they would really die here. Patriarch Ouyang looked at this scene and could not help but ponder. After a long while, he looked at the old man and was about to speak when he heard the old man's deep voice shout, "If we retreat now, all our previous efforts will be wasted." The old man looked at everyone with a gloomy face and said, "Quickly pack up and set up a defensive formation. It's just a group of snakes. Could it make all of you want to retreat?" Everyone did not speak. They clenched the long swords in their hands and listened to the hissing sound of the poisonous snakes sticking out their tongues. As time gradually passed and midnight gradually deepened, suddenly, someone's expression changed slightly. He quickly lay down on the ground and listened carefully. "What's wrong?" Someone next to him asked, looking nervous. "Please don't let another group of ferocious beasts come before the group of snakes has left. It seems that someone is coming this way. Judging by the sound, there should be dozens of people." The man lying on the ground said. After listening carefully for a while, he stood up. "Patriarch, someone is really coming this way. Judging by the footsteps, I'm guessing that there are less than 50 of them." Hearing this, Patriarch Ouyang glanced at the old man and said, "How far away are they from us?" "About 500 meters. The other party's speed is very fast. They should be here soon." For a moment, no one spoke. Who would be coming? If he came over now, wouldn't he be bumping into the group of snakes? Not far away, Jinifeng, who was leading the way, stopped. He glanced at the flames in front of him and turned back to Fengjiu. "Madame Xianyuan, the flames in front are dazzling. I reckon that they are from the Ouyang family. If they have only reached here, it means that they have not reached the peak where the snow flower is located." Fengjiu sat on the flying feather and flew at a leisurely pace. The people beside her were paying attention to their surroundings. At this moment, Hui Lang tilted his head and listened. Then, he said to Fengjiu, "Madam, there should be a group of snakes in front. I can hear the hissing sound of snakes sticking out their tongues. Also, there's a faint smell of blood in the air. I think the group in front has been attacked by the snakes." "Well, it's fine. We'll go our own way," Fengjiu said, motioning for them to continue moving. Thus, under her signal, the group continued forward. When they arrived at the place in front of them, they couldn't help but be secretly surprised when they saw the scene. Chapter 3783. At this moment, the Ouyang clan members looked at the 20 people in astonishment. When they saw the 20 mercenaries and the less than 10 people, they were both astonished and shocked. Apart from the mercenaries who had some wounds on their bodies and their clothes which were slightly dirty and messy, the rest of them did not have a single wound on their bodies. Moreover, their complexions were extremely radiant, and they did not look like people who had stayed in this wild and dangerous place for such a long time. Instead, they looked like people who were leisurely strolling around. As for the red-clothed woman who was pregnant with a child, she sat leisurely on a flying artifact and calmly looked at their sorry figures. At that moment, many people felt ashamed. They did not know how the mercenaries had escorted them here. Why did they not have a single wound on their bodies? "Captain Jean, I didn't expect it to be you. It's great to meet you here." Ouyang family head smiled. After seeing them, he suddenly remembered something and said, "Captain Jean, we can't go any further. There's a group of snakes over there. We were attacked by those poisonous snakes just now." Jean Yifeng looked at the sorry state they were in and nodded. "That's right. We meet again, Ouyang clan master." His voice paused for a moment, and he led the team forward as he said, "I'm familiar with this area. The snake you encountered should be the purple-gold double-headed crown. It's a venomous snake, and anyone bitten by it will lose their life in an instant." Seeing Jean Yifeng continue to lead the team forward, he instinctively wanted to speak, but he didn't know how to do so. However, what was even more strange was that when Jean Yifeng led the team forward, the snakes automatically scattered to the side, not daring to move forward. Hiss! How is this possible? The people of the Ouyang family looked at this scene with astonishment on their faces. Jean Yifeng smiled embarrassedly. How could they not have seen many shocking things along the way? Ever since Madame Xianyuan said to speed up, they had not encountered any ferocious beasts. Even if they did, they would automatically avoid them. Just like the snakes in front of them. After sensing their auras, they automatically avoided them. He knew that they were avoiding them not because of the mercenaries, but because of Madame Xianyuan and the rest. The elder's eyes flashed. Seeing them pass by, he immediately said to the group, "Quick! Keep up!" As soon as he finished speaking, he led his men towards Jean Yifeng and the others. The people of the Ouyang clan followed suit. As they walked, the poisonous snakes did not dare to approach. They were puzzled but could not find a suitable opportunity to ask. Until they saw the people in front stop, the people of the Ouyang clan at the back walked forward together. But who would have thought that the moment he approached, the woman in red's indifferent voice could be heard. "Let's rest for a while before continuing our journey in the morning. Also, when we continue on the road at dawn, we'll lose those people behind us," Fengjiu said to Leng Hua. His voice was indifferent and emotionless. At the same time, it also made the Ouyang clan's blood boil. What a narrow-minded woman. The old man walked over and snorted with an ugly expression. Chapter 3784. Who were they to her anyway? What right did she have to protect them? Furthermore, their motives might be the same as theirs. Since that was the case, all the more reason for them not to travel together. She had kindly advised them, but it was fine if they did not appreciate her kindness. Instead, they had developed resentment. Indeed, it was difficult to be a good person. Leave? What right do we have to leave? You're a pregnant woman and instead of staying at home, you're restless enough to come here. If anyone should leave, it should be you. The elder scoffed coldly as he stared at Fengjiu with disdain and disgust. From his point of view, this woman was not content with her family. She was a woman who only had good looks. If it had not been for the mercenaries' protection, she would have died a long time ago. Yet, she still had the audacity to boast shamelessly that they should leave because their battle powers were not up to par. What a joke! Impudent! Du Fan's eyes turned cold as he berated the elder. He waved the fan in his hand and a gust of wind attacked, sending the elder flying. He crashed heavily into a large tree several meters away. Ah! A cry of surprise came from the old man's mouth. He did not even have time to react before he was sent flying. Bang! Grand Elder! The members of the Ouyang family were shocked and quickly rushed forward to help him up. However, as soon as they did so, they saw him spit out a mouthful of blood. Elder! On the other side, Leng Hua and the others looked on indifferently as if they were looking at an ant. Ji Feng and his mercenaries' hearts thumped as they secretly shook their heads. This elder of the Ouyang family was a little too tactless. They had no idea how powerful Madame Xianyuan and the others were. That was why they had dared to speak to her in such a manner. Great, now that they've angered them, they should have a taste of their own medicine, right? However, from the looks of it, the old man's injuries were not very serious. It could be considered that they had already shown mercy. Otherwise, it would have been easy for Du Fan to take his life in that short moment. Fengjiu sat by the fire to warm herself. She glanced indifferently at the elder and spoke in a nonchalant voice with a hint of coldness, "The people around me don't have very good tempers, so you'd better think twice before speaking to me. It's true that I'm a pregnant woman, but the people around me are not. If they were to attack, forget about the few of you, even if there were a few more groups, they would still be able to wipe you all out." Hearing this, the members of the Ouyang family were angry, but they did not dare to express themselves. Just now, when that person made a move, even their grand elder was no match for him. Now, who would dare to open their mouths? Seeing this, the head of the Ouyang family calmed himself down and suppressed the shock in his heart. He clasped his hands at Fengjiu and said, "Madam, I'm really sorry. If I've offended you earlier, I'd like to apologize to you. Just stay away from me. After all, what the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve over," Fengjiu said indifferently. The head of the Ouyang family was a little embarrassed by her words. He could not help but look at Ji Feng, hoping that he would speak up. Ji Feng saw the look in his eyes and knew what he meant. Thus, he said to him, "Head of the Ouyang family, you'd better leave as soon as possible. The rest of you are all injured. It's not good for you to continue." Chapter 3785. The next morning, Fengjiu and the rest left. Everyone in the Ouyang family knew about it, but they all hesitated. The other party had made it clear that they were not allowed to follow them. If they followed them, it would seem "Let's go." Follow them. The elder who had his eyes closed opened his eyes and shouted. However, this shout still caused a faint pain in his chest. Thinking about how he was injured by the young man last night, he could not help but clench his fists tightly under his sleeves. To think that he, the grand supreme elder of the Ouyang family, was someone that even the master of the family had to be courteous to. However, he was injured by a young man. How humiliating. "Elder, this doesn't seem appropriate." The Ouyang family head frowned slightly. "They have already said so much. If we follow them, it's really. You must know that whether your father can successfully advance this time, and whether our Ouyang family can advance to the next level, all depends on whether we can harvest the Xueling flower and use it as medicine." The elder looked at the Ouyang family head with a solemn expression and said, "The Xueling flower blooms for a year. If we miss this chance, we will have to wait for next year. Do you think that if we miss this chance, we will have another chance? The Ouyang family head was silent. He knew that if he missed this chance, he would not have another chance. However, as the master of the family, he was also a person with dignity. Now that they had said so much, if he still followed them, he would not be able to lose face. Hence, he lowered his voice and said, "Since you want to leave, let's wait first. We will leave after some time." As he said that, he did not say anything more to the elder. Instead, he walked to a nearby tree and sat down. "You." Seeing this, the elder was so angry that his face turned red. Seeing him like this, he took a deep breath and did not say anything else. A few days later, Feng Jiu and the rest, led by Genie Feng and the rest, arrived at the mountain peak with the Xueling flower and stopped. Genie Feng looked up and said to Feng Jiu and the rest, "Look, it's this mountain peak. The Xueling flower grows on that side of the cliff. As there is a divine beast beside the Xueling flower, no one has been able to harvest the Xueling flower. To harvest the Xueling flower, one needed to carefully dig out the roots. If the roots were broken, the medicinal effect would be lost from the roots. Hence, they could not harvest it on their swords while the beast was not paying attention. They had to dig it out carefully." Feng Jiu looked at the mountain peak and said, "We can't see the Xueling flower. It looks like we have to go closer or go to the top of the cliff." "Madam," Feng Jiu and the rest. "Madam, it's more dangerous to go up." Madam, it's wills. Madam, it to go up." "Alright, you guys can stay. Just wait here. Let's go up and have a look," Feng Jiu said and glanced at Lang Hua and the others. "Master, let's go take a look first. If there are Xueling flowers, we can just harvest them," Lang Hua said, worried about her health. Chapter 3786. When Du Fan and the others heard her words, they felt helpless and could only say, "Then we'll escort master over." The mercenaries at the side were dumbfounded. It can't be. The pregnant Madame Shenyuan wanted to go up. What if that ferocious beast went berserk and hurt her and the child in her womb? Madame Shenyuan, that ferocious beast is no ordinary ferocious beast. It's a ferocious beast that has reached the 6th or 7th level of a divine beast. Genie Feng said with a frown. He felt that her actions were a little inappropriate. Feng Jiu smiled. "That's why I have to go up." If they went up, no matter how strong their strength was, that divine beast level vicious beast might not necessarily stay still obediently. Only if she went up and used the ancient divine beast pressure in her body as a deterrent, that divine beast would not dare to cause trouble. She looked around and felt that this place was not bad. She said, "Commander Jean, after we go up, I'll have to trouble you to set up a formation around us. I don't want anyone or any ferocious beast to come within 100 meters." They were already going up. Why did she still want them to set up a formation here? Genie Feng was surprised but did not ask. He only said, "Madame Shenyuan, don't worry. That won't be a problem." So, under the protection of Du Fan, Lang Hua, and the others, Feng Jiu flew towards the direction of the cliff. After around the time for half an incense stick to burn, she arrived at the cliff. Passing through the fog, they saw a snow-white flower that was bigger than a fist blooming on the cliff. The red leaves and the snow-white flower were extremely dazzling. "Master, that's the Xueling flower, right?" Lang Hua looked at the blooming snow-white flower with a smile on his face. At least this trip was not in vain. "That's right. This is indeed the Xueling flower. Looking at its head, it should be quite old." She was in a good mood as she spoke. Her gaze shifted and landed on a cave beside the Xueling flower. The cave was not very big and it was pitch black as if it was bottomless. There were no ferocious beasts coming out, but the cave was faintly filled with a savage and bloodthirsty aura. "Master, I'll go and lure that beast out," Guemo said. Just as he was about to step forward, he was stopped by Fengjiu. "No, you don't have to go," Fengjiu said, raising his hand to stop him. She looked at the cave entrance and adjusted the pressure in her body. Not long after, the ancient aura in her body spread out and covered the surrounding area. Not only the ferocious beasts in the cave, but even the ferocious beasts in the sky and on the ground felt the ancient aura. They all trembled and lay down, not daring to move. "Come out. Let me see what kind of beast you are." Fengjiu's voice seemed to come from ancient times, containing a powerful and dignified aura. Just as her voice fell, a pitch-black four-legged dragon lowered its body and carefully crawled out. It did not dare to crawl out too far. It only lay at the entrance of the cave and looked at Fengjiu. After hesitating, it asked in a trembling voice, "Do you want to kill me?" A level 6 or 7 divine beast could already speak the human language. However, beasts rarely spoke the human language. Hearing it speak now, everyone's expression was indifferent. After all, they had seen many divine beasts speak. Chapter 3787. Fengjiu raised his eyebrows and glanced at the ferocious beast that had retracted its bloodthirsty aura, saying, "That will depend on your performance." Hearing this, the ferocious beast thought for a moment and a light bulb went off in its head. It looked at the flower at the side and asked, "You want this flower too? I can pluck it for you. Also, I've collected the snow water from the Xueling flower. I can give it to you as well." It had been guarding the Xueling flower. Every year, it would wait until it was about to wither before eating it. Usually, it would guard it and collect the snow water that dripped from the petals of the Xueling flower. It originally wanted to wait until it had collected enough before consuming it all at once to increase its strength. It did not expect to meet a human that terrified it from the bottom of its heart today. The ancient coercion that this human was emitting was too terrifying. As long as it was a beast, there was no beast that was not afraid of this ancient coercion. It guessed that this human must have formed a natal contract with an ancient divine beast. Naturally, it did not dare to offend such a powerful existence. It offered up the snow water it had collected and the Xueling flower it had been guarding all this time just to beg for its life. This was because it did not doubt that this human had the power to crush it. Hearing the ferocious beast's words, Fengjiu's eyes flashed with surprise. "You actually know how to collect the snow water from the Xueling flower?" Seeing that this human was interested, the ferocious beast hurriedly said, "The snow water from the Xueling flower can help me advance, so I've been collecting it with the intention of consuming it all at once to break through. I've also been waiting until the flowering period of the Xueling flower is about to wither before eating it." Divine beasts like them would always guard a spiritual plant because it could bring them benefits. Otherwise, it would not have been guarding this place and occupying this territory to prevent other ferocious beasts from coming over. Hearing this, Fengjiu laughed, "Since that's the case, take out the snow water. As compensation, I can give you a pill that can help you advance." When the ferocious beast heard this, it did not think much of it. For a beast of its level to advance in rank, it couldn't just rely on ordinary medicinal pills. However, it didn't dare to say anything. Instead, it quickly returned to the cave. Not long after, it came out with a jade gourd between its teeth. It placed the jade gourd at the entrance of the cave and said, "I got this jade gourd from a cultivator. I've been using it to store snow water. I've been collecting it for a long time, but this is all I have." It looked at the jade gourd with a pained expression. It was reluctant to part with it, but it knew that nothing was more important than its life. Fengjiu waved her hand and the jade gourd flew into her hand. She looked at the jade gourd and smiled. "It's a good treasure." She unscrewed the lid and sniffed the snow water inside. Then, she poured out a drop. The drop of water that she poured out condensed into snow in her palm. After a while, it gradually melted into a drop of ice-cold snow water. Seeing this, she nodded in satisfaction. Not bad, it's indeed the snow water from the Xueling flower. She glanced at the ferocious beast and said, I've always been a reciprocal person. Although the Xueling flower doesn't belong to you, you've been guarding it all this while. You've also collected the snow water. Therefore, this pill should be yours. With that, she flicked her finger and a crimson-red pill flew out from her hand and landed in front of the ferocious beast. Chapter 3788. The markings on the pill made it gulp in shock. It quickly reached out its front paw and grabbed the pill. It looked at Fengjiu and asked, Is this really for me? Yes. Fengjiu responded. He glanced at it and then shifted his gaze to the Xueling flower. He leaped forward and landed on the protruding part of the flower. Leng Hua, Du Fan, and the others stepped forward and quietly surrounded her. Fengjiu stood guard there for the whole night. When the first ray of sunlight shone on the next morning, she took out a tool from her space and carefully dug out the Xueling flower. Looking at the entire Xueling flower, she smiled and said to the people beside her, Let's go. Let's go and refine the pill. The ferocious beast, who did not dare to move, watched them leave. Only then did it stuff the pill into its mouth and press it under its tongue. Then, it quickly left and went to another place. The Xueling flower was gone, the snow water was gone, and it even met such powerful humans. Now that it was given such a heaven-defying pill, who knew when they would go back on their word and snatch the pill back? It was better for it to quickly find another place to hide and swallow the pill first before deciding what to do next. Because of the fog, the mercenaries could not see what Fengjiu and the others were doing at the cliff. They only knew that after a night, when they saw them return, everyone smiled. Leader, they're back. They've been standing guard there for the whole night. Could they have picked the Xueling flower? Another mercenary said and looked at Fengjiu and the others. I didn't hear any sounds of battle. Compared to the mercenaries' surprise, Genie Feng looked at Fengjiu and the others and said to everyone, Have the surrounding formations been set up? Have you checked it thoroughly? Don't worry, leader. It's all set up. There's not a single animal within 100 meters. The mercenaries immediately responded. Everyone, go back to your positions and guard. Without my orders, no one is allowed to leave. Genie Feng ordered in a deep voice. Yes. Everyone responded, and no longer gathered together to talk. Instead, they quickly went to guard the surrounding spirit array. Fengjiu and the others descended from a high place. As soon as they landed, Fengjiu instructed Leng Hua and the others, You guys stay guard. I'm going to refine pills. Don't let anyone disturb me. Yes. They responded and left Qin Xian to help out, while the others quickly spread out to guard the surroundings. When Genie Feng saw this, he asked, Madame Xianyuan has picked the herbs. She still wanted to refine pills. Right here. When he thought of this, he could not help but be secretly shocked. The medicinal pills that Xueling had refined were not ordinary. She could actually refine them. Could it be that she was an even better alchemist than the Medicine Tower's Fan Lin? Since Fengjiu was refining pills, Genie Feng could not stay by his side. Therefore, he also retreated to guard 100 meters away. It could be said that only Leng Hua and the others were qualified to stand guard at a distance of 50 meters. Qin Xian had been learning medical skills and identifying herbs for some time. At this moment, Fengjiu arranged for her to stay by his side and help out. After the area was cleaned and the items were placed, Fengjiu waved his sleeve and the alchemy cauldron appeared in front of her. Chapter 3789. Qin Xian exhaled softly and nodded. Master, please give me your orders. Although she had already learned it before, she was still a little nervous to be her master's assistant at this time. She knew that this medicinal pill was related to whether or not the Yama Lord could wake up. There was no room for error. Fengjiu looked at the spiritual herbs on the table. She closed her eyes and once again went through the pill formula in her mind. Not long after, she opened her eyes and raised her hand. A cluster of flames flew out and the pill furnace opened with a whoosh. The flames burned and the aura surged as it filled the surroundings. Fengjiu paid attention to the temperature of the fire in the furnace. When the temperature of the flames in the furnace reached the level she wanted, she immediately activated the array of the pill furnace. Remove the leaves of the heavenly heart grass and leave the roots. Peel the outer skin of the 5-colored bamboo and wait for use. Soak the petals of the 7-leaf purple spirit flower in the spiritual spring water. Take the mu xian from the ebony wood. As Fengjiu spoke, she stared at the fire in the furnace. The array diagram on the pill furnace rotated due to the activation of the pill array. She looked serious and did not dare to be careless. Because there was only one Xueling flower, and the spiritual herbs on the table were collected for a long time before she found them. She could not afford to fail. She could only succeed in one try. As Qin Xian listened, her hands quickly processed the spiritual herbs according to her instructions. After processing each spiritual herb, she placed it on a jade plate. At this moment, she heard her master's voice and instinctively raised her head to look. Heavenly heart grass. Fengjiu reached out to the side. Qin Xian immediately handed the processed heavenly heart grass on the table. The fire in the furnace was strong and the aura was surging. Fengjiu could also feel the heat from the furnace. She threw the spiritual herbs into the pill furnace. At the same time, her hand reached out to Qin Xian and said the next spiritual herb to be used. Every time she took a spiritual medicine, she would take a second look to see if Qin Xian had handled it properly before putting it into the furnace. She used the spiritual power in her palm, and the pure spiritual power burned in the furnace along with her life flame. Her forehead also exuded a trace of sweat. Lang Hua and the others stood guard in the surroundings. Their gazes fell on their master, who was refining pills in the middle. They were a little worried that her body wouldn't be able to take it. After all, in addition to using spiritual power and aura, one couldn't be distracted while refining pills. One's spiritual power had to be extremely concentrated. The higher the grade of the pill, the harder it was to produce pills. It was very likely that their master would have to stand like this for an entire day. For the entire day, she couldn't relax for even a moment and had to constantly pay attention to the pills in the pill furnace. This kind of high-intensity operation was usually fine, but now that she was pregnant with twins, they were really worried that she wouldn't be able to take it. With the addition of the elixirs, the burning and roasting of the flames, the fragrance of the elixirs permeated the air. The mercenaries who were standing 100 meters away watched this scene with their eyes wide open as they stared at the red figure. Even these boorish men who didn't know how to refine pills could tell that Madame Xianyuan was extremely proficient in the art of pill refinement. Although a distance of 100 meters was a bit far, they were cultivators after all. If they wanted to, they could still see clearly at such a distance. They were very curious and disgusted. However, when they saw the serious expressions on the faces of Madame Xianyuan's subordinates, they were stunned and didn't dare to say a word. They just watched quietly. Chapter 3790. However, those beasts that had already gained spiritual intelligence didn't come over at this time, but instead stared at it from 100 meters away. Fengjiu, who was standing in front of the pill furnace, turned his palm, and the spiritual herbs in his hand flew into the furnace. Some of the spiritual herbs in his hand had to be processed again before they were put into the furnace. The steps were so complicated that it was dazzling. Qin Xian handled the spiritual herbs on the table according to her master's instructions, then stood to the side and watched. This was the first time she was watching her master concoct pills from the side. She only knew that her master's concoction technique was skillful and natural. Her control of the amount of medicine added into the furnace and the furnace fire could be said to have reached the point of perfection. Even if she was watching from the side, she still couldn't understand the essence of it. She saw her master open up the wind array of the pill furnace, and with a whoosh, the fire in the furnace burned even more fiercely. After burning for a while, the intensity of the fire became gentle. Following her master's addition of one medicine after another, the medicinal smell that permeated the furnace was no longer a single medicinal smell, but many different medicinal smells that permeated the air. Some distance away, a group of 70 to 80 mercenaries were walking in the forest. When some of them smelled the medicinal smell that filled the air, they couldn't help but stop. "Big brother, there's a medicinal smell in the air. It seems to be coming from that direction," the man said and pointed in the direction of Fengjiu's group. Even if they didn't see anyone there, the medicinal smell couldn't be blocked. A tall and thin man behind them smelled the medicinal smell, and a trace of light flashed through his eyes. He walked forward and said, "There should be someone refining pills here. From the medicinal smell, this medicinal pill is not ordinary." The man in the lead had a fierce expression on his face, and his physique was that of a tiger's waist and a bear's back. At this time, when he heard their words, he narrowed his eyes and looked in the direction that the man was pointing. "Oh. This medicinal smell is not ordinary. How is it different?" He retracted his gaze and looked at the tall and thin man who spoke. "Leader, just by smelling the medicinal aroma, I can smell no less than 7 or 8 types of extremely rare spiritual herbs. If any of these spiritual herbs were to be sold outside, they would be worth thousands of gold coins. Now that so many precious spiritual herbs have been mixed together to refine a pill, even if I can't see how this pill looks like, I can guess that this pill must be extremely precious." As the lanky man spoke, he stroked his mustache and smiled. "Besides, isn't the Xueling flower in front of us?" The person who led the way said that the Xueling flower was at the cliff in front of us. "Maybe someone else got there first and picked it." Hearing this, the man in the lead narrowed his eyes and sneered, "Plucked? That's our mission for this trip. Even if they took it, we'll make them spit it out." However, the man's voice paused, and his face revealed a ruthless expression. "I'd like to know, who picked the Xueling flower before us? And who's using it to refine medicine here? If the Xueling flower has really been plucked, then we'll keep an eye on those who are refining the pill. When they're done refining the pill, we'll snatch the pill." "Big brother, good idea. Leader is wise," the two people at the side immediately said. As soon as they finished speaking, they looked at each other and then looked away. Chapter 3791. "Yes, sir," the man responded in a loud voice. Then, he quickly called out to a few people behind him. Raising his chi, he rushed toward the cliff. The man in the lead looked at the other 2 men and ordered, "Number 4, Number 7, the 2 of you lead some people to scout ahead. Find out who those people in front of us are. How many people are there? Don't act rashly and alert the enemy. Once you're done, come back and report to me." "All right. We'll go now." 2 men with scars on their faces walked out. They waved their hands and led a small team of about 15 people forward quickly to scout ahead. "The rest of you, rest here," the man shouted and asked the others to rest. Then, he looked at the tall and skinny man and said, "Come over here and tell me. Based on the smell of the medicine, can you tell what the effects of the pill are?" As he said that, he walked towards the tree and sat down. The tall and skinny man paused for a moment, then followed him and sat down beside him. He said, "Leader, it's hard to say. After all, each pill master uses different ingredients. Furthermore, I can only smell a few of the herbs. It's really hard to tell what kind of pill the other party is refining." As he said that, he glanced at the man. Seeing that the man's face had darkened because of his words, he was obviously not satisfied with the answer. So, he quickly said, however, those herbs are all rare items. Furthermore, the Shui-Ling flower's medicinal effect is to clear the veins and remove impurities and produce new blood. So, I think that no matter what kind of pill it is, it must be an extremely precious pill. However, the prerequisite is that the other party is able to successfully refine it. As he said that, he stroked the mustache above his lips and said calmly, it's just that it's not that easy to use the Shui-Ling flower in medicine. Even though the smell of the medicine is now pervading the forest, as long as the pill hasn't been condensed into a pill, I can't say that the pill will definitely be refined successfully. Hearing this, the man took a sip of water, pondered for a moment, and said, looking at the entire continent, there are only a few people who truly possess superb alchemy skills. Normally speaking, most people wouldn't refine pills here unless they absolutely had to. As he spoke, a light flashed across his eyes as he continued, currently, some dark forces outside are recruiting alchemists. This alchemist daring to perform alchemy here, it seems that in addition to being extremely confident in his alchemy technique, there is also a powerful figure following and protecting him. Otherwise, how could he have the courage to perform alchemy in such a place? Hearing his words, the tall and thin man's mouth twitched as he looked at him and asked, Commander, are you planning to recruit that person if possible? Recruit? Ha! The man narrowed his eyes and a cold smile appeared on his face. I don't intend to keep such a person by my side. Who knows when the pills I eat will be tampered with and I won't even know if I die. He rubbed his wrist as a light flashed across his malicious eyes. However, although I'm not interested, there are many people outside who are. The people here were already planning, but they didn't know that the people they were eyeing were not a group of ordinary cultivators, but Asuras from hell who specialized in reaping the lives of certain people. Chapter 3792. Ji Nifeng's eyes narrowed. He felt a gust of wind blow past him, followed by the faint smell of blood in the air, and the faint sound of something falling to the ground. His heart tightened, and he turned around abruptly. Not far away, he saw a few lifeless corpses. He was shocked and immediately rushed forward, but he did not expect another corpse to be thrown out. The next moment, he saw Du Fan walk out from behind the tree with a fan in his hand. His expression was normal, without a trace of fierceness, as if the people on the ground were not killed by him. Leader Jean, I'll have to trouble you to deal with these corpses. Du Fan smiled, his face full of friendliness. He gently fanned his chest with the fan in his hand, and after saying that, he continued to walk back to his original position. Hui Lang walked out from the other side, and after taking a look, he also returned to his original position to guard. In the dark, Ying Yi observed the surrounding scene from the tree, silently blending into the forest. Leader. A few mercenaries walked over, wanting to say something, but after looking at the corpses on the ground, they could not say a word. What else could they say? What else was there to say? After taking a deep breath, Ji Nifeng walked forward to take a look. After seeing the things left behind by the dead, he frowned slightly. These are the underground mercenaries. Since they appeared here, it probably means that there are more of them. Hearing this, the mercenaries' hearts sank. The underground mercenaries are ruthless, and they often do things like robbing and killing in places like this. Now that their members have appeared here, their team is probably not far from here. If they know that their people are dead, I'm afraid. Ji Nifeng pondered and said, let's deal with the corpses first. I'll go and inform young Master Du. After saying this, he walked towards Du Fan. Young Master Du, I have something to tell you. Ji Nifeng said. Even though he knew that the man in front of him was only a subordinate of Madame Shenyuan, he did not dare to be disrespectful or presumptuous. Du Fan looked at him and asked, what is it? Those mercenaries are underground mercenaries. Just now, there were only a dozen of them killed by you. I think their team should be nearby. Now that the dozen of them are dead, the people in the team will definitely come here. When the time comes, they will probably fight. Hearing this, Du Fan closed the fan in his hand and put his hands behind his back. He smiled and said, "Since they're here, it's no big deal. Do what needs to be done. Don't think too much, just stay there and guard. We're here for everything." Hearing this, Genie Feng's anxious heart finally calmed down. He replied, he turned and walked back to his original position. The mercenaries were resting and waiting for the scout to return. However, after waiting for a long time, even the people who went to the cliff to check had returned, there was still no sign of the scout. "Big brother, the Xueling flower above has been dug away. I heard that there was a ferocious beast guarding there, but it's gone," a man said and brought people to the rest of the team. Looks like it was dug away by the people who refined the pills." He had already guessed this, so he was not surprised when he heard this answer. Chapter 3793. They're not back yet. The leader spoke in a gloomy voice. His sinister gaze fell upon the forest in front of him. No one knew what he was thinking. Seeing this, everyone looked at each other in dismay. Someone asked, "Leader, why don't we go ahead and take a look at the situation?" The leader glanced at the man who had spoken and said, "No need. Let's wait a little longer. If they're not back by sunset, there's an 80 to 90% chance that they've been ambushed." He paused and narrowed his eyes. "If they've been ambushed, you won't be able to escape death. You won't be able to bring back any information." When everyone heard this, they looked at each other and asked, "So we're just going to wait like this?" "Just wait. Even if we're going to take action, we'll have to wait until nightfall. Before that, eat and sleep well to restore our energy." "Yes." They replied and each found a place to sit down and rest. Some took out some leftover roasted meat from last night from the space and ate it. Some closed their eyes and rested. They waited until the sun had set. The weather in the forest suddenly turned cold as night fell. The people who had been sent out to scout had yet to return. Actually, as time passed, even though they didn't say anything, they knew in their hearts that if it wasn't for the fact that something had happened, they would have returned long ago. Since they still hadn't returned, it could only mean that they wouldn't be able to return. Since the people who had been sent out to scout hadn't returned, they could only wait until nightfall to make their move. With the cover of the night and the other party's laxity, it was the best time for them to make their move. Seeing the leader stand up, the rest of the mercenaries followed suit. At this moment, the tall and thin man saw this and asked, "Leader, do you plan to make your move tonight?" "That's right." He narrowed his eyes and a vicious look flashed across his eyes. "I'd like to see who dares to lay a hand on my people. But that pill master's pill hasn't been refined yet. If we make our move tonight, I'm afraid it'll affect the refinement of the pill." He frowned slightly. Naturally, he knew that if they made their move, the pill master wouldn't be able to refine the pill. If he were to refine the Xueling flower, wouldn't that be a waste of the pill? The leader glanced at him and said, "How do you know that the pill master will be able to refine the pill?" The tall and thin man choked and couldn't speak for a long time. "That's right. Until the last moment. All of you, follow me." The leader raised his hand and gestured. Then, he walked forward. The mercenaries behind him quickly followed without hesitation. In that empty space, Qinxin was already standing to the side, while Fengjiu was controlling the fire and pill formation in the cauldron. She hadn't stopped for the entire day, especially now that all the spirit herbs had been thrown into the cauldron, waiting for the pills to condense. 2. Chapter 3794. Mistress, do you want Qin Xian to help you massage your shoulders? Qin Xian saw that her mistress was only guarding the furnace and paying attention to the temperature of the fire. She knew that she didn't need to do anything else but wait for the herbs to fuse and condense into the elixir. Thus, she wanted to help her mistress massage her shoulders so that she could relax and not be so tired. Fengjiu had been busy for the whole day and her shoulders were a little stiff. Thus, she said, "Okay, help me loosen my shoulders." "Yes," Qin Xin replied with a smile. She went behind Fengjiu and helped her massage her shoulders to loosen her muscles and bones. Fengjiu ate the spirit fruit while looking at the furnace in the furnace. She smelled the fragrance of the herbs in the air. With a flip of her palm, a stream of air flew into the furnace. The burning flames became a little smaller, like a warm fire that was slowly refining the herbs in the furnace. Du Fan and the others looked around. Although there was an array around them, they knew that someone was trying to break through the array based on the sounds that came from the array. "You guys stay here. I'll go out with Hui Lang and the others to take a look," Du Fan said to Leng Hua and Leng Shuang and the others. Then, he led the others out. Unexpectedly, before they could get out of the array, they heard a rumbling sound. The array was broken. Du Fan and the others stopped and looked at the broken array in surprise. They were a little surprised. This array was set up by Genie Feng and his mercenaries. They didn't get involved. However, this array had strong defensive power. Now that it was broken so easily, it seemed that these underground mercenaries were really skilled. "Are you the ones who killed our brothers?" The leader of the group walked out, followed by a group of mercenaries. They stared ahead and their gazes fell on Du Fan and the others. They looked like they were in their 20s or 30s and looked like young masters. They didn't take them seriously. Their gazes swept past them and landed on Genie Feng behind them. Their eyes flashed slightly. Genie Feng, the leader of the first mercenary group. The leader stared at Genie Feng with an unknown deep meaning in his eyes. "Exactly," Genie Feng replied in a low voice. He walked over to Du Fan and the others and looked at them. "What do you want?" "Ha ha ha ha." Hearing Genie Feng's words, the man in the lead raised his head and laughed loudly. His laughter was arrogant and conceited. Suddenly, he stopped and stared at Genie Feng with a vicious and bloodthirsty expression. "What do you want to do? Shouldn't we be the ones asking you what you want?" Originally, he thought that it would be a very large and strong team, but he didn't expect that there would only be so few people here. Even if they were protected by the number 1 mercenary group, they would not be able to defeat so many people. Moreover, he had long wanted to experience the skills of the number 1 mercenary group leader, Genie Feng. He took a step forward, and a vicious voice came out of his mouth, "You killed more than 10 of my brothers, ah! I won't let it go so easily." Genie Feng frowned slightly, but he didn't say anything. He just pulled out the sword at his waist and said, "Since you want to fight, I'll keep you company. I've long wanted to experience the skills of the number 1 mercenary group leader. It just so happens that I have a chance to fight with you today. I couldn't ask for more." As the leader spoke, he waved his hand and a long sword appeared in his hand. Chapter 3795. He saw a red-clothed woman with a big belly sitting in front of the furnace. He only saw the woman's stunning side profile. With just one glance, his body involuntarily trembled, and he instinctively took a step back. She is. The man who had been vicious and ruthless a moment ago had now turned pale. There was fear in his eyes as he took a step back. The cold sweat on his forehead and his trembling body were telling others that he was extremely terrified at this moment. "Leader? What's wrong?" The man next to him saw this and couldn't help but ask in a low voice. At this time, the leader of the underground black mercenary group didn't seem to hear the words of the mercenary beside him. His eyes were wide open in horror as he looked at the beautiful woman in red who was about 100 meters away. He only felt his heart beating violently, and he was so nervous that he couldn't even speak. In his mind, he couldn't help but think of the news he got from the underground black market a few months ago, as well as the portrait that was destroyed after just one glance. A few months ago, a group of mysterious people killed a peak master of the immortal sect and crippled more than a dozen of their disciples. As a few months passed, it seemed that people had forgotten about them. However, since he saw the portrait and heard those things that time, he couldn't forget them. First, it was because the woman in the portrait was extremely beautiful. Just one glance was unforgettable. Second, it was because of the thunderous means that made people shudder. He couldn't forget such a person even if he wanted to. Feng Jiu waved her hand, indicating for Qinxin to step back. At the same time, she took a step forward to the cauldron. Her spirit force gushed forth as she added a few drops of snow water into the cauldron. At the next moment, the atmosphere in the surroundings changed. In the pitch-black night, there seemed to be muffled sounds of thunder. This is the pill thunder. The tall and thin man who followed behind and didn't step forward saw the strange phenomenon in the sky and couldn't help but open his eyes wide. Sure enough, just as his voice fell, he heard a crackling sound in the sky. Then, a heavenly thunder rumbled and struck the furnace. Boom! A powerful aura surged, and the loud sound shook the ground slightly, not to mention the pressure and movement spreading in the dark night. Fengjiu didn't have the time to pay attention to those underground mercenaries. At this time, she was standing in front of the pill furnace, and her hands were quickly forming a seal, and a pure aura flowed into the pill furnace. In other parts of the forest, some people were surprised when they saw the strange phenomenon in the night sky. They were all resting in the forest when they suddenly noticed that something was wrong with the aura surging in the night sky. Is this the evolution of a dire beast? How is that possible? Even if ferocious beasts evolve, there might not necessarily be heavenly lightning. What could it be? Look at the strange phenomenon in the night sky. That kind of strange phenomenon should be the birth of a rare and precious medicinal pill. Someone said excitedly, pointing at the strange phenomenon in the night sky. As soon as he finished speaking, he took a deep breath and headed in that direction, intending to see what was going on. Go. Who knows, they might be able to do something big. Ha 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 ha. The birth of a top-grade medicinal pill would definitely cause a lot of people to fight for it. In this forest, in addition to some people who were training, there were also some people who had various reasons to come in. Therefore, when they saw the strange phenomenon, they all had an idea and headed in that direction one by one. Chapter 3796. A loud rumble reverberated through almost half of the forest. The ground shook because of the rumble, and all the beasts in the forest looked up at the sky, smelling the medicinal fragrance that permeated the forest. Some of the beasts sniffed with all their might as they headed in that direction. Just by smelling the aroma of the spiritual medicine, they could feel the blood in their bodies pulsing. It was a feeling of extreme excitement, a kind of impulsive desire. In the darkness of the night, some people in the forest rushed towards the place where the lightning struck. However, some of them were too far away. Even if they rushed over, they probably wouldn't be able to reach it in a short period of time. At the place where Fengjiu was refining pills, 100 meters away, the mercenary group leader's expression changed greatly as he quickly retreated. His heart sank as he looked at the smiling man holding a fan standing not far in front of him, as well as the outstanding men and women around him. I really didn't mean to offend you. We'll leave immediately. The mercenary group leader said with a pale face as he stared vigilantly at Du Fan and the others, afraid that they would suddenly attack him. At this moment, he finally knew why the people he sent out to find out didn't return. It turned out that they had met a group of people like them. Looking at the shocked expression of the mercenary group leader, the smile on Du Fan's face deepened. He fanned himself with the fan in his hand and asked, "Do you know who we are?" It was a light sentence. Although he had a smile on his face and looked amiable, the mercenary group leader's forehead was covered in cold sweat. I don't know. The mercenary group leader wiped his sweat and said with a trembling voice. Have you seen my master? Du Fan asked again with a smile. He released his aura and enveloped the mercenary group leader's body. The powerful aura that fell on him was like a mountain pressing down on him, making it hard for him to breathe and unable to straighten his back. He knew that if Xian Wen didn't know, she would probably attack him. Therefore, he said with a trembling voice, I saw the portrait on the wanted poster in the underground black market. At that time, I saw the portrait of your noble master. I only saw it once, really, that's all. Hearing this, Du Fan nodded. I see. Seeing that he didn't say anything and just stared at him, he didn't know what he was thinking. That mercenary leader didn't dare to move an inch. He braced himself and stood there, allowing Lin Li to size him up. He didn't dare to open his mouth. After a long while, he couldn't stand the oppressive atmosphere anymore. Then, he mustered up his courage and asked, Sir, can we leave now? If he had known that these people were the ones on the wanted posters, he wouldn't have come even if they offered him a large sum of money. These people's ferocious reputation had long been secretly spread. After the people from the immortal sect, they had consecutively exterminated several clans that had sent their portraits to the bounty posters. Until now, whenever this matter was mentioned, the underground forces would tremble in fear. Du Fan glanced at him, then looked at Leng Hua and asked, What do you think? Leng Hua glanced at them and said, Master's medicinal pills are about to come out of the cauldron. The commotion caused by the heavenly thunder is not small. The cultivators in the surrounding area have probably heard the commotion and rushed over. Let them stand guard in the surroundings. Chapter 3797. No problem, no problem. Leave this to us. We'll definitely guard the surroundings and not let anyone come near. He hurriedly promised, only hoping that these people wouldn't attack them. Although he was an extremely vicious person and wasn't weak, he knew that he was far from being a match for these people. If he insisted on going against them, it would be like hitting a rock with an egg. He would be seeking his own death. Now that they finally had such an opportunity, they naturally had to grasp it well and strive to survive. Go. Du Fan gestured and stood there watching. Yes. The mercenary group leader hurriedly responded and hurriedly led his mercenaries to the surroundings, spreading out to guard. This scene made the 20 mercenaries behind him dumbfounded. What was going on? Why was even the extremely vicious underground mercenaries afraid of them? Who exactly were they? Jin Yifeng's heart trembled slightly. Although they had seen too many shocking and even inconceivable things along the way, seeing the fearless underground mercenaries actually begging for mercy and even guarding the surroundings still made him feel incredulous. Boom! The third bolt of lightning struck, shaking his mind and clearing his mind. He instinctively looked towards the pill furnace and saw Madame Xuanyuan's palms flipping rapidly. The spiritual aura in the furnace seemed to be rushing towards the core of the furnace at this moment. It was also at this moment that the sound of fighting seemed to be faintly heard from 100 meters away. He immediately tensed up and shouted in a low voice, Be alert. The 20 mercenaries didn't dare to be careless. They guarded the surroundings tightly and listened to the battle in the pitch-black night. It seemed to be the battle between the ferocious beasts and the underground mercenaries. There were also some clanging sounds of the blades of other cultivators clashing. The people from the Ouyang family who had been hurrying towards this direction heard the 3 bolts of lightning in the sky and looked in that direction. The old man's eyes flashed and he shouted, Quick! Speed up and advance! The group of people moved swiftly in the night and rushed towards that direction. At the same time, Fengjiu was completing the final step in the pill furnace. After the pill was condensed and formed, she clapped her palms and a pill emitting a pure white light flew out of the pill furnace. When the pill came out of the furnace, a rich medicinal fragrance assailed their nostrils. She looked at the pill that was as white as moonlight, and her heart was filled with excitement. She had never been so excited even when she had refined a 9th-grade medicinal pill in the past. At this moment, as she watched this medicinal pill take shape, the rims of her eyes involuntarily turned slightly hot. She had finally succeeded. With this pill, Mose would definitely wake up. With a wave of his hand, he opened a pill bottle and placed the moonlight pill into it. Then, he closed the lid and put it into the space. After storing the pills into her space, her heart finally settled down. She slowly exhaled a breath of relief. "Congratulations, Master." Qin Xian, who was beside her, smiled happily. She was also very happy. Fengjiu's lips curled up into a smile. Her eyes twinkled as she said, "This cauldron of pills took me an entire day to refine. There were 3 pills, but in the end, only one was successful. The other 2 were useless. However, one is already enough." Creak. Chapter 3798. There were no pills in the furnace. For fear that the flesh-eating crow's flapping wings would hurt her, she quickly retreated and covered her belly with one hand. Qin Xian also protected Fengjiu behind her at the first time. She did not attack, but just protected Fengjiu and retreated, so as not to hurt the child. Leng Shuang and others also stepped forward at the first time. Yingyi's sword was extremely fast. No one knew where it came from, but in an instant, it chopped at the flesh-eating crow that was trying to get into the furnace to grab the pills. The flesh-eating crow flopped. At the moment when it dodged Yingyi's attack, its whole body directly got into the furnace. As soon as it got in, its wings fluttered inside, making a flopping sound, as well as a cry as if it was scalded. Fengjiu looked at the scene with some astonishment. He saw that the flesh-eating crow actually got into the furnace and was still fluttering its wings inside. Perhaps affected by the heat of the furnace, the flesh-eating crow's feathers fell a lot in its fluttering. Because the pills refined in the furnace had to be taken orally, and the flesh-eating crow was a beast that ate carrion, Fengjiu frowned and walked out from behind Qin Xian. He turned his palm, and a stream of air shot out. The flesh-eating crow that was fluttering in the furnace was knocked out by a force from the furnace. Squeak! Woo! A scream sounded, followed by a slightly hoarse cry. A mass of black flew out, and the next moment, it was chopped in mid-air by the sword Qi. Whoosh! The sharp sword Qi cut through, and blood splashed on the grass. The flesh-eating crow's body was cut in 2 and fell into the weeds. Fengjiu glanced at the flesh-eating crow and looked around. She saw that there were flying beasts on the trees not far away, and pairs of eyes were staring at her. Seeing this, she frowned slightly. Walking forward, she came to the side of the pill furnace. She saw that the 2 dark black pills in the pill furnace had been flapped by the carnivorous crows and had rolled to the edge of the pill furnace. There were also a few carnivorous crow feathers in the furnace. Thus, with a move of her palm, a ball of flame flew out from her hand and once again ignited the furnace. In a short while, the few feathers inside were burned clean. She put away the 2 black pills and thought to herself, although these 2 pills are useless, I wonder what kind of problems will occur if I consume them. She put away the pills, and with a flick of her sleeve, the furnace was also put into her space. The roars of ferocious beasts and the clanging of swords and sabers made her frown in displeasure. Cloud swallowing. A light flashed and the cloud-swallowing beast came out of the space and stood in front of her. Master! You've been in there for a long time. Go. Go and take a walk around. Fengjiu said, and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. Her eyes twinkled with an indescribable smile. Hearing this, Cloud Swallowing understood her meaning. It immediately responded, and took a step forward. It raised its head and roared. Roar! Following that roar, a powerful sacred beast aura spread out. The airflow that could be seen with the naked eye was like ripples in water. It shocked the beasts on the trees and the fierce beasts in the forest, and they all turned around and ran for their lives. Bang 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 bang. Chapter 3799. Some of the cultivators who had rushed over from the forest saw the beasts running around in a frenzy. They were so shocked that they quickly hid their cultivation aura to prevent themselves from being targeted and attacked by these crazy beasts. The surrounding beasts were all running around. Chaotic howls and the sound of trees being knocked down could be heard from time to time. This caused the dark night to become restless and made people feel uneasy. Especially when Tunyun leaped and circled around the area, the beasts ran even faster. Some of the beasts even lowered their bodies and crawled away in order to quickly leave the place that made them feel fearful and uneasy. Compared to the chaos and fear of the surrounding beasts, Fengjiu was much calmer. Especially after the surrounding beasts had all run away, not a single sound was made. "Master, are you tired? Do you want to rest for a while?" Qin Xin asked. Seeing that she had been busy refining the pill without resting and had only eaten a spiritual fruit to replenish her strength, she was really worried that her body wouldn't be able to take it. Because she had successfully refined the pill, Fengjiu was more happy than tired. However, she couldn't wait to give the pill to Mose and see his body's reaction after taking the pill. Thus, she said, "Guard the surroundings. I'll rest for a while and leave tomorrow." As soon as she finished speaking, she waved her sleeves and a flying ship appeared in the empty space in front of her. The flying ship gradually grew in size and occupied the entire empty space. After instructing them, Fengjiu led Ling Shuang and Qin Xin onto the flying ship. Once they were on the flying ship, she directly went to the cabin where she could rest. She closed the door and flashed into the space. "Zay, I've refined the pill." Fengjiu couldn't hide her joy as she quickly walked to the ice bed. When she came to the side and saw Xianyuan Mose lying on the ice bed, she couldn't help but hold his hand and pull it close to her lips to kiss it. "Zay, I've refined the pill," she said again. This time, her voice was gentle and steady, filled with joy and excitement. She didn't immediately take out the pill for him to take. Instead, she held his hand and checked his body's condition. Then, she used silver needles to move several major acupuncture points on his body. When she felt the flow of energy in his body, she took out the pill and stuffed it into his mouth. She gently lifted his chin and let the pill slide down his throat. Then, she took out a bottle of spiritual liquid and poured it into his mouth. She let the spiritual liquid slide down his throat and helped him swallow the pill smoothly. She pressed her palm against his heart and a pure spiritual aura entered his body through her palm, dispelling the cold air on his body. She stood guard by his side and checked his pulse from time to time. As time passed, she couldn't help but smile when she felt that his pulse was beating more and more vigorously. That night, she stood guard beside the ice bed, watching and paying attention to the changes in his body. In the end, she couldn't take it anymore and leaned against the side to sleep. "Master?" The contracted beasts saw that she had actually fallen asleep on the ice bed and were worried that her body couldn't take the cold air. Thus, they used all their strength to help her up and bring her to the other bed to rest. Chapter 3800. When Lao Bai, who was squatting by the ice bed, saw Xianyuan Mose's fingers move slightly, he could not help but widen his eyes. He leaned forward to take a closer look and asked, "Do you think his hand is moving?" The little beasts stared at Xianyuan Mose's hand. After a long while, they saw it move again. They said in unison, "It moved. It really moved. Is he going to wake up?" Sure enough, they saw his hand move again. Lao Bai did not know how he was doing, so he came to Fengjiu's side and said, Master, the Yama Lord's hand is moving." Master. Fengjiu faintly heard a voice saying that the Yama Lord's hand was moving. She almost instinctively opened her eyes and jumped up from the bed. "Master, the Yama Lord seems to be waking up. His hand is moving," Lao Bai said hurriedly. Hearing this, Fengjiu quickly got out of bed and walked towards the ice bed. She came to his side and checked his body. When she put her fingers on his pulse, her nervous heart suddenly jumped, and her eyes were filled with surprise. She took out a silver needle and inserted it into his body again. When she put away the silver needle, she saw the eyelashes of the person who had been sleeping soundly tremble slightly, and he slowly opened his eyes. Fengjiu called out softly. This call was filled with unconcealable joy and excitement. She held his hand and felt his hand gently holding hers back. Xianyuan Mose opened his heavy eyelids. When he saw her dressed in red beside him, the corners of his lips curled up slightly, revealing a smile. Ah Jiu. His voice was very soft, and he sounded very weak. However, hearing his soft call, Fengjiu's eyes turned red. Yes, I'm here, I'm here. She held his hand and pressed his hand tightly against her face. Xianyuan Mose closed his eyes slightly, but there was a smile on his face. Seeing that she was fine in front of him, he was relieved. Master, the Yama Lord has fallen asleep again. Lao Bai leaned forward to take a look. Seeing that he had fallen asleep again, he could not help but turn back to look at Fengjiu. Fengjiu smiled and said, he just woke up and his body is still very weak. Let him sleep. It will gradually get better. As long as he woke up, she could slowly nurse his weak body back to health. She took a step back, and a gust of air rushed out, lifting Xianyuan Mose from the ice bed and sending him to the bed. Now that he had woken up after taking the pill, there was no need for him to use the ice bed anymore. Right now, she had to prepare some medicine to help him recuperate so that he could recover as soon as possible. After she covered him with a blanket, she looked at Senior White and the others and said, all of you take care of him while he's here. I'll come in once I have the time. Master, don't worry. We know what to do. Senior White replied and grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. Fengjiu nodded and then left the space. As soon as he returned to the cabin, Leng Shuang's voice came from outside. Master, are you awake? Fengjiu opened the door of the cabin, looked at the two people standing outside and asked, what's the matter? Leng Shuang looked at Fengjiu and said, Master, the other things have been taken care of. However, we caught a group of people from the Ouyang family. They were sneakily using medicine around last night and were caught by the mercenaries. Now they are waiting outside for Master to deal with them. Chapter 3801. At this moment, about 50 meters away from the airship, the remaining 20 or so members of the Ouyang clan were tied to a tree with ashen faces. Compared to the old man's viciousness and unwillingness, the Ouyang clan head's expression was one of regret. If he had known this would happen, he would have brought his men and left this place. At least, he wouldn't have ended up like this. Ji Feng glanced at the Ouyang clan head and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He didn't think that they would follow them. Not only did they follow them, they even tried to use drugs to treat them. Now that they had ended up like this, even if he wanted to plead for mercy, he couldn't bring himself to do it. The underground mercenaries had already left. Because there were many casualties after last night, Du Fan saw that they didn't have any more tricks up their sleeves and let them leave. At this moment, there were only Ji Feng's mercenaries, the Ouyang clan's people, and Fengjiu's group left. When Fengjiu, dressed in red, slowly walked over, the old man raised his head and glared at her fiercely. Which? Fengjiu raised her eyebrows. She really didn't know where the word witch came from. Which? You colluded with the underground mercenaries and even used witchcraft. The surrounding beasts don't dare to come close. Even the number 1 mercenary group, Ji Feng, was used by you. What are your intentions? What are you scheming? Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled. What a joke. You have ulterior motives. You're greedy by nature and scheming against others. Now that you've ended up like this, you don't know how to repent. You've really opened my eyes. She glanced at him and ordered Du Fan, this old man, cripple his cultivation and throw him out of my sight. Du Fan was surprised. He thought that his master would directly order them to be killed. He didn't expect that she didn't order to kill him, but to cripple his cultivation. However, in this kind of place, where beasts were everywhere, without his cultivation to protect his life, it was almost impossible for him to survive. Thinking about it, his master just didn't want to stain her hands with the blood of such people. Thus, he agreed and walked to the front and back. He said to the two mercenaries, "Bring him over." The two mercenaries glanced at Jinifeng, and after seeing him nod his head imperceptibly, they went forward to untie him and brought him in front of Du Fan. "Kill me if you dare. This old man is not afraid of death." The old man gritted his teeth and roared. His eyes were like a ferocious beast as he stared at Du Fan and Fengjiu with a bloodthirsty glint. He struggled to rush forward, but unfortunately, all his major acupoints had been sealed. Moreover, there were two mercenaries holding him down. Seeing this, the Ouyang family head moved his lips. However, he did not say anything in the end. He couldn't even protect himself, so what else could he say? "Kill you? You should be thanking the heavens and earth that my master didn't kill you and crippled your cultivation and spared your life." Du Fan snorted coldly. The next moment, he struck out with his palm and shattered the inner core in his dantian. No one else could hear the sound, only the old man himself knew that when the palm landed, the force accurately hit his naiden. With a cracking sound, his naiden instantly shattered, and his cultivation gushed out madly with the shattering of his naiden. It quickly rushed out of his body, and his body was rapidly aging. Ah! Chapter 3802. They watched as the elder's cultivation was crippled. They watched as his body rapidly shrank. His entire person aged at a speed visible to the naked eye. His original appearance could not be seen at all. They were shocked and panicked. They were afraid that they would end up like this. The elder's cultivation was completely gone and his entire person became so old that his teeth fell to the ground. His back was bent and his body was trembling. He curled up on the ground and did not even have the strength to cry out. "Throw him somewhere where he can't be seen." Du Fan ordered the two mercenaries to do it. The two mercenaries stepped forward and dragged him up. After throwing him away, they returned. Fortunately, because Fengjiu and the rest were in the main area, the ferocious beasts did not dare to come near. Therefore, for a while, the elder was still lying in the weeds, on the verge of death. The people of the Ouyang family were all tensed up. Even the young men and women didn't dare to breathe loudly at this time. They all lowered their heads and didn't dare to look at Fengjiu and the others, fearing that they would be the next to be crippled. "Tell me, how should we deal with you?" Fengjiu asked. His gaze swept across the people and finally landed on the Ouyang clan head. "I clearly told you not to provoke us. Why didn't you listen?" The Ouyang clan head looked at Fengjiu and said, "Madam, please give us another chance. As long as you're willing to let us live, I, Ouyang Yuan, will never forget it." "Let you live? And what did you do? Want to use medicine to deal with us?" Fengjiu sneered, "I've always been a person who clearly distinguishes between kindness and hatred. Repaying evil with good is not my nature." Ouyang Yuan's heart couldn't help but sink. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Indeed, she had already warned them to leave and not follow them. But they still came. They even listened to the elder's words and used medicine to deal with them. They were confident that even if they knew how to refine pills, they would not be able to distinguish the smell in the air. But who knew? "Madam Xianyuan, could you spare their lives?" In the end, Jinifeng still opened his mouth to plead for them. After all, he and Ouyang Yuan were friends. Regardless of whether his words would work or not, he felt that he should try. Fengjiu glanced at him and said with a half-smile, "You want to plead for him?" Jinifeng felt his scalp go numb when she looked at him like that. However, now that things had come to this, he could only brace himself and say, "Although I know that I shouldn't, I still hope that Madame Xianyuan can spare their lives. If I let them live today, they might take my life in the future. Fengjiu said casually. Although she didn't think that they had the right to take her words, she knew that if she let them go, things wouldn't end like this. Madame Xianyuan, we are willing to make a curse. We don't dare to expect to be your subordinates, but we are willing to go through fire and water for you, just for a chance to live, because we don't want to die. Ouyang Yuan said. Even if he had to use his life as a curse, he still hoped to live at this time. Chapter 3803. Hearing this, Ouyang Yuan was stunned for a moment. His body trembled and he could not hide his excitement. Thank you, madam. Extracting a strand of divine sense and putting their lives in their hands was better than dying here. Moreover, he felt that this madam was not a bloodthirsty person. Otherwise, she would not have spared them so easily. Father, we don't have to die. A woman next to him asked Ouyang Yuan in a trembling voice. Ouyang Yuan took a deep breath and said, from this moment on, you must remember Madame Xuanyuan's kindness. You must not have a trace of resentment, and you must not spread what happened here. Yes. Nearly 100 people came out, but now there were only 20 or so people left. These 20 or so people were all experienced and strong cultivators, as well as Ouyang Yuan's sons and daughters. Now that they heard this, how could they have any other thoughts? It was good enough that they could survive. Du Fan looked at them, then walked forward and extracted a strand of divine sense from each of them. Then, he let them go and let them leave first. After dealing with the matters here, the flying ship also left and went out of the forest. Seeing the flying ship leave, the people of the Ouyang family could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. At this time, a young man next to them said, I thought she would kill us. I didn't think she would let us go. Another person said. After taking a deep breath, he looked at the Ouyang family head, are we going out now? Let's go. Ouyang Yuan said. Just as he was about to step out, he heard his daughter's voice. Father, then what about the Grand Elder? Should we take him out? The woman asked carefully. Hearing this, Ouyang Yuan's face sank. If it weren't for him, we wouldn't have suffered such heavy casualties, and we wouldn't have fallen into such a situation. Now that his cultivation has been destroyed, he can only wait for death. Let's go. Don't care about him. This is what he deserves. When the people heard this, they did not dare to say anything and just quickly left with him. 2 days later the spaceship stopped and landed somewhere in the forest. Qin Xian was cooking medicinal porridge. This pot of porridge was made with ginseng and spirit chicken caught in the forest. In addition to ginseng, there were also a few medicinal herbs that could replenish qi and adjust one's vitality. A faint medicinal fragrance also diffused along with the light smoke, causing the surroundings to emit a medicinal fragrance. At this moment, Fengjiu was inserting silver needles into Xianyuan Moza's body. Ever since that person woke up for a while, he hadn't woken up, which made her a little worried. Today, after coming in, she helped him insert the silver needles again to move his meridians and blood. After sitting in the space for a while, she went outside. Seeing Qin Xian cooking porridge, she said to Ling Shuang, go and see if the porridge is ready. Yes. Ling Shuang responded and went down. He came to Qin Xian's side and asked, Qin Xian, is the porridge ready? Qin Xian looked back at him and said with a smile, it's ready. I was just about to bring it to the master. As she said, she scooped a bowl of porridge and sent it to the spaceship. Ling Shuang followed behind. After getting on the spaceship, he saw the master take the porridge and enter the cabin. Chapter 3804. Perhaps it was because he heard Fengjiu's voice, or perhaps his body was gradually recovering. Xianyuan Moz slowly opened his eyes and looked at Fengjiu sitting by the bed. Seeing that he had woken up, Fengjiu was overjoyed and said, "I'll help you sit up and eat." She leaned forward slightly and helped him sit up against the headboard of the bed. When Xianyuan Mose sat up and saw her bulging belly, a trace of daze appeared in his eyes. He stared blankly at her belly. Seeing this, Fengjiu pursed her lips and smiled. She took his hand and stroked her belly, saying softly, "Mose, we have children. I'm pregnant with twins of mixed sex. In 2 or 3 months, the children will be born." Xianyuan Mose listened to her words, and his mind went blank. He was going to be a father. They had children. For a moment, his chaotic mind gradually became clear, and his heart was filled with ecstasy. But when he thought about how he was unconscious and could not accompany her, especially when she had to take care of him while she was pregnant, he could not help but feel distressed and guilty. "Aju, you've worked hard." He held her hand. His voice was slightly hoarse, and he was still a little weak. "It's not hard." She smiled slightly. She did not tell him that her health was also very bad when she was pregnant, and it was only later that she slowly recuperated. Xianyuan Mose looked around and asked, "Why am I here?" "I'll feed you porridge first." "I'll tell you in detail later," Fengjiu said as she brought the porridge over from the bedside. She scooped up a spoonful and blew on it before feeding it to him. Xianyuan Mose ate the porridge cooperatively. The taste of medicinal herbs in his mouth was mixed with the taste of ginseng. As soon as it entered his stomach, his body gradually warmed up. As he ate, he looked at her. Seeing that her face was rosy and her complexion was good, he was relieved. After finishing the bowl of medicinal porridge, Fengjiu put the bowl to the side and helped him pull up the quilt. Only then did he say, "Do you still remember the profound light gate we discovered back then? After you were seriously injured and fell into a coma, I helped you recuperate while protecting your heart meridians. However, at that time, I didn't find any method or medicine to treat you. Furthermore, my green lotus has stopped growing after that battle, so it no longer provides any life force. I originally wanted to find an ancient golden lotus to help you expel the black lotus chi in your body. However, after coming here, I haven't been able to find any information about the ancient golden lotus. However, after flipping through the ancient records, I did find some rare and precious elixirs that can expel the black lotus chi. Therefore, I came to the barren land to pick the last medicinal ingredient and refine it into a pill for you to consume." Speaking to this point, she smiled faintly. Fortunately, the pill was successfully refined and the medicinal effects were as I expected. After consuming the pill, the black lotus chi in your body has been completely dispersed. Right now, your body is weak. As long as you rest and recuperate for a period of time, you will be able to recover. Hearing her words, Xianyuan Mose's eyes slightly moved. It was unknown what he thought of, but a strange look flashed across his eyes. "What's wrong?" Fengjiu had been looking at him all this time, so she naturally didn't miss the strange look in his eyes. Xianyuan Mose pressed a hand on his leg and said in a slightly hoarse voice, "My leg doesn't seem to be able to feel it." Ever since he woke up, he found that his leg didn't seem to be able to move. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.